Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this Board of Selectmen meeting, date September 25th, 2017. I welcome everybody at home and certainly everyone who is attending the meeting tonight. To start off with, if we could all rise for invocation and pledge of allegiance.
Father God, we come before you with great thanks. Father, we ask for wisdom and discernment, understanding and critical thinking as we delve into these matters with governing our community. We pray to you in the way that we were taught. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, as we look around the room, as we can see, there are a number of people attending tonight, so I will certainly try to expedite our agenda as much as possible to get people in and out. I do have people that do have some issues with their calendars. They have to get to another appointment or whatever else. So I'm going to start with our change of manager, Another Spot Inc., Jill Mann, I believe.
Hi, thank you very much.
Sure.
I appreciate your indulgence.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good.
Jill Mann here on behalf of Another Spot, Inc., the owner and operator of The Spot in Georgetown. Here with me this evening is Lindsay Stone. Lindsay is the assistant to the general manager presently. She's been working at Georgetown, The Spot, for how long now?
About 2.5 years.
2.5 years. So she has been promoted. Actually, her predecessor was promoted within Serenity, and now Lindsay is also being promoted within the business. So she is here to request your approval for an appointment as the manager on the license. In connection therewith, we did submit to you all of her requisite information, the query report, as well as the personal information for her. And obviously, she's here this evening in case you have any questions you'd like to ask her.
Okay. Thank you very much. Welcome.
Hi.
Anybody have any questions on the board? Sure.
On page 2 of that application, might be more, it's probably more for our board. I noticed that the primary phone, the mobile phone, and your email is crossed off. And what I'd like to know is, does our town need those in case we need to contact you where you will be the manager?
Yeah, you're more than welcome to the information.
Okay.
I think, Gary, I crossed it off on yours just because it's, we have it in the office, so just because we're.
I see.
Okay, so we do have it on record.
Yes.
That's why I said
Yeah,
it was
I just
probably,
redacted
it was
on-
probably more for us.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the only other thing on here, and it's probably more a word, I think it cleared it up on the next thing, on Another Spot. You've listed that from 2015 to present, you've been the manager, but we're now making you, I guess it's the manager on record.
Right.
Or as Dave said, you're now the general manager.
Yeah, before I was the assistant, and now I'm the general.
That was it, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
No.
No, good. Okay. We need a motion? Not at all? I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we change the manager of record for Another Spot, Inc., DBA The Spot, 19 West Main Street, as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? No? If not, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
That was easy, Jill.
That was, thank you. It's not often easy like that. I'm gonna keep going, I think.
Next, I'd like to call our veterans agent, Karen Tyler, to the front.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Karen, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? I'm going to pass these around. So, can you pass this around?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. So, I wanted to come and invite the town administrator and the board. So the Korean consulate has issued an ambassador for peace medal to Korean. Hi.
Sorry.
That's okay. Okay, so to Korean War veterans that served in the Republic of Korea from 1950 to 53. And so I have been collecting names and DD-214s for anybody served during that time. On October 20th at 4 o'clock at the Ipswich High School, we're going to be having a ceremony. And included in that ceremony is going to be, we're going to have about 50 Korean War veterans or surviving spouses that are going to be receiving this medal. And I just, if you just think about it, the fact that, the Republic of Korea has issued this medal to U.S. servicemen and women to give appreciation for our participation. I just think it's fabulous. I think it's a great community event. I'm going to have Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts involved. We have the opening speaker is going to be the Secretary of Veteran Services, Secretary Urena. He's going to be there. And also the Consul General is going to be the ones presenting the medals to the veterans and surviving spouses. So if you can make it, please shoot me an email or whatnot, or you can go through Doug. He's our Board of Directors for Georgetown. And just let me know that you'll be coming. I'm going to have the front section, for honored guests, and I would love for you guys to be there, or who's going to be there. I'll have seats available. We'll have Senator Tar will be there. He'll be reading off the names. We also have some state reps that'll also be there. So I think it's going to be a great event. So I just want to make sure that you guys knew about it, let residents of Georgetown know about it. And just to also remind everyone that I am your veterans agent. My office is in Ipswich, but I also come out to Georgetown. I do house calls, or if they need me to come into town hall to see me, that I am available and I'm out there. The other thing that we have coming up is a North Shore Summit for veterans. It's called Vets for Vets. I can give this to Janet so you can. And so I'm on the planning committee for that, and it's working with the VA and a lot of other resources for veterans, everything from service dogs to yoga to VA healthcare. It's just going to be, and so it's specific for the North Shore to get more veterans out and get veterans connected to the resources that are out there for them. All right, does anybody have any questions on veteran issues? No?
Yeah, you okay if I post this at our church perhaps?
Yes, absolutely. Oh, and I'm glad that you said that.
Because I know that you came out to the church there where I worship and
Yeah.
visited there, and we've got some of your stuff on the bulletin board.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you said that. So doing the opening prayer is going to be Reverend Edwards from the Georgetown First Congregational Church, and she's also a veteran. She was in the Navy. So I was very pleased when I reached out to her. She was very excited about it. So I am too. All right. Well, that was the main thing. Oh, go ahead, Ned. Anything?
Very good.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah, but you should get them in.
Yeah. Just gonna be more of an extensive conversation.
Yep.
All right. Let's see. Okay, so the board would like to call up Mr. Peter Milano for our discussion on business development.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman,
How are you?
members of the board.
Thank you for attending tonight, we appreciate it.
Happy to be here. We have some members of the team that I've congregated. Would you like them? They all have separate skill sets that I think will be crucial to what the town is looking to do development-wise. So we have Eleni Veritamos from Mass Development, Karen Conard from the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission, and also from my team, Maria DiStefano is here.
Okay. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you.
We appreciate you, you attending tonight. You know, David, you know, since,
Yeah, so-
you have a good, you know, relationship, why don't
Yeah.
you introduce to everybody, why the team is here?
Yeah, so we have acquired a parcel of land, and we've had some internal discussion, obviously public discussion about what the use could be for that property. You know, whether it's revenue generator, is it a one-time revenue generator? Is it, you know, there's been things thrown out as a, you know, a sports complex type thing, or arena type thing, a skating rink, you know, all the way to the idea of using it as a packaged sewage treatment plant facility. So I reached out to Peter, having known Peter for a long time. Also had a conversation with Secretary Ash about it about 3 weeks ago also. And I mentioned you were coming in.
He's a little bit more important than I
Yeah,
am.
no.
My boss, yeah.
No. So I asked Peter to come in and, you know, maybe brainstorm with us a little bit, maybe give us some best practices that other communities have used, you know, a similar piece of land. You know, my particular interest, and it's maybe, I'll speak for myself, I'm really interested in solving some of the water issues and the storage issues in our downtown area. And, you know, how it would, if we could maybe look at one of the uses as a packaged sewage treatment plant, or, you know, if that's crazy, then maybe I am crazy, but, you know, where do we get the money for that? So maybe you can kind of give us some success stories of some other communities, and maybe some, you know, some thoughts. You know, you're a great resource. You know, you guys are very, very knowledgeable, and you go around the state, you know, travel the whole state all the time, and find out, you know, see what other communities and assist other communities. So maybe, you know, there's some good information for us. So that's why I reached out to my longstanding friend Peter. And
Thank you. Well, I actually took our conversations and then I spoke with the people who actually know a lot about this, because they are the professionals. And Eleni Vertamos, who is here, if I may, Mr. Chairman, she and I have had some discussions about, through the town administrator, I've received some information on the parcel, and I think Eleni has some fairly good knowledge of what I think you want to do, highest and best use. And then Eleni has actually done this with several other communities, so there's some track record and there's some opportunities to not recreate the wheel, if you will. So if I may.
Well, thank you all for inviting me tonight. As Peter said, we've been talking about your parcel over the past couple days, and since you were kind enough to reach out to us to participate. And I think where you really started from is really one of the most critical parts of the process, which is really nailing down and refining the goal of what the reuse is. And that's always really the most critical thing that we find when we work with communities, is to really hone in on what that reuse is. And there's a number of ways to get to that point. And it could be, if you have I don't know specifically if Georgetown has a master plan. You mentioned that some of you have been raising a couple issues. Has it been through a community input process? Sort of how has it been unfolding? And I always think that that's really the best way to start to get that idea of starting to refine the concept, which is, do you really want to keep, is it a one-time revenue? Do you want to just put some things together, almost like get the site ready just to sell? Is it something you'd want to ground lease so you could have some recurring revenue? I think those are some financial things the town itself needs to consider as it goes through the process, and sometimes those reveal themselves pretty naturally. You know, one of the things that we sometimes do with communities, so to just step back a little bit, so Mass Development, for those of you who don't know, is the state's quasi-public economic development agency. Our primary work is through financing real estate and major equipment purchases for manufacturers. We do so many things that I've been at Mass Development for a number of years, and I still find out new things that we help do for communities. But one of our groups is real estate services, and one of those things that the real estate services group does is to do exactly this, is to work with communities to help them get to a point where they can reinvigorate, revitalize, and put a parcel into some kind of economically beneficial use. So Sometimes we'll work with the community on a highest and best use analysis. So look at the market, look at some of the demographics, see what's going on in the area. I know it's zoned industrial. We usually work with we have some people on staff for a house doctor. If not, we contract with another consultant to work on that, to sort of continue to work through those issues. And then what we often do is we sort of get to kind of a couple options of, well, it might be best for a sports complex, or it really might be, it looked like there were some wetlands issues, so maybe only 15 acres of it's going to be developable versus something else. Does it make sense to parcel up the property and develop something up here and maybe, do something else on the front section? So sometimes what we'll do is we'll go through that process, and then we'll work with the community to do an RFP, put it out for RFP, work with the developer maybe to do some marketing of the site, and then have them dispose of the property either through the sale or through a long-term lease. The other thing is, if the community's not really sure what they think, they say, we'd like it to be industrial, but we're not really sure what kind of industrial use. We'll help work through the RFI process. A great example of a community who did that not too long ago was the town of Salisbury. They had a parcel they took by tax title that when they sort of ran through the numbers, they said, we can't really figure out how we can find anyone to get interested. But then what they did was they said, well, it turns out we have another parcel on the other side of town. And if we put them together, we might be able to get some of these numbers to pencil out. And they knew they wanted housing, but they didn't know what. So they put out an RFI and basically said to the developing community, what do you think we should put here? It has to be housing based, but how many units do you think you could get in here? What kind of units do you think you can get in there? And ultimately that turned into a really great project. It's going to be 16 units on one parcel, 32 units on another parcel of affordable housing. And it was a great example of, kind of knowing what their end use was to some extent, but getting there kind of through that process. An example of a little bit more recent work that we've done specifically is in the city of Lawrence. They have a 13-acre parcel that is a brownfield site, so it has some really complicated issues on that one in particular. But we've been working with them on pulling together not really so much a highest and best use analysis, but they had a lot of data, market study data that we had a consultant kind of basically unify all the information, put it all together. And right now we're in the process, we're just finishing some really slick marketing documents based on those 3 uses they identified, really tailored to the site so that now they can go to the developer community and say, here's all the information in one place. Here's all the regional population statistics, here's the household income statistics. They can kind of go, out of the box. So we do a lot of work with communities on that, and a lot of people go about it in different ways, but we can usually work with a community to say, okay, what have you done so far? What stage are you at? How can we kind of help you go through to the next stage? The way projects usually come to us through the real estate services group is we'll be having a what we kind of call it's not an application, but basically a request for information. We'll go out, you'll hear from Mass Development. We're going to email all the communities in our region to say, what are the kind of big problems that you're stuck on? Do you have a parcel or a project that you want to get going? And I would invite the community through the manager's office or your economic development department to apply for that. The other big program we have going on right now that the application just opened for that may be a fit is our site readiness program that just launched last year through in conjunction with the Commonwealth through Peter's group. It's aimed at larger parcels, more of 40 to 50 acres, but we will still look at ones that are smaller but still significant. And the goal for that program is really to get parcels ready for redevelopment. If there's surrounding acquisition problems or if it's development challenges, it's really sort of I kind of call it a think tank strategy of getting people together to advance that. And I will follow up and send you all information. If you haven't received it, we did do a mailing to most communities maybe about a week ago, but I'll make sure you all have that as well to take a look at. But our goal is always to partner with as many communities as we can, especially on big picture projects. It sounds like this is probably one of your single largest undeveloped parcels. It's in tax title. It's not doing much right now. Everyone probably drive. I assume you drive. I did see some interesting notes on your For example, I see that it only has a really small amount of road frontage and access, so it may need a transportation study to think about, if you want to put a larger retailer in there, they have very, very explicit ideas of what they want for highway access and things like that. I did laugh at the spite strip. I'm not sure what that was. If that was an abutters issue there, we see that on occasion on parcels. But I think that there's some opportunities for us, either formally or informally, to work with Peter and work with Karen and Maria to help you kind of think through this over the coming days.
We are involved in putting our strategic plan together. And in fact, we're probably, almost at the finish line. Well, maybe we're at the 15-yard line here, to use a football analogy. But
Yep.
So I think that would give us some good information about
Yeah.
where the need is.
Yep.
Like all cities and towns, there's need everywhere, right?
Yep.
Let's face it, between affordable housing and more retail and more mixed use, and so there's so many issues. For us, we acquired this land, and it's now what do we do with it, and do we have any money to research it?
Sure.
To help? So getting to that point so your office would be able to help us with some of the cost of the RFP or RFI or help us do those.
So exactly, I think to your point, which is, I think the number one issue that we see in communities is just lack of capacity. You just don't have the people to do the work to get it done. And then sometimes the cost of hiring a consultant to do it is just really cost prohibitive. Depending sometimes on real estate services, depending on what the project is, we'll cost share. Sometimes we'll assume as much of it as we can, and we'll say you need to have a municipal contribution, and we generally work that out. On the site readiness program, that works a little bit differently. The way that program works is that if the parcel goes either to be sold or is put back in productive use, we would be repaid at, let's say you sold the parcel, and let's say that you ground leased it or you sold it at a minimum, just enough to cover costs. What we then do is we are repaid, I'm going to put that in quotation marks, 15% of the net new revenue, either over 20 years or until it's paid off. So the idea being that, again, we profit share, we put the work in together, you keep 85%, we get 15%, depending on the amount. We may never get repaid, but it's a way of sort of encouraging municipal skin in the game, if you will, and to show that it's really a partnership. So part of it exactly is with the goal would be to try and give you some capacity on this issue without having to completely foot the entire bill.
So taking a look at specifically at that parcel, does anything immediately pop up? I know there's the wetlands there issue. We also have some frontage issues and road access issues. Anything when you took, any ideas for use, or I'm way ahead of myself here.
Just from my perspective, I really can't speak to that simply because I think the amount of information I have is low, and we'd really need to pull some information together. But I think that it's shown that you're asking all the right questions, which is what is really the best reuse? Is the best long-term use for economic development for the community to build some wastewater treatment plant simply because maybe you aren't able to get other businesses because that's a restraint on capacity and growth. So maybe that really is in the long term the best thing to do versus putting up a sports facility that yes generates tax revenue but may still not solve a longer term, bigger term issue that the community's faced with. And I think again, it is zoned industrial already, so I think you've got some automatic constraints there. I don't know, I shouldn't presume. I would imagine it would be difficult to rezone it for something residential or something given the wetlands. And I have no idea if there's any environmental issues on the property from any of the butters. It didn't seem to be that, but that's always an issue as well.
And as far as the reuse of the property, once that, it appears you actually know what you don't want, which is great because that helps move towards what you do want. And I actually work in about 125, 130 communities, and I'll bet, and just taking a rough guess, 25 or 30 of them want to build a rink or want to put some sort of sports complex in their community, but it's just not cost effective. They just can't do it. And you know, there are some communities that find a way, but generally speaking, just moving off of the balance sheet and taxes in, taxes out, it's usually not something that can be accomplished. There are some private operators, we've worked with them, I can give you guys their names. If you want to do this as a water treatment facility for the rest of, for other commercial sites, we might be able to assist with some MassWorks grants, which are certainly in play, even for the frontage issue that you have there. If there's a need to change or alter, the Planning Commission has extraordinary experience in doing this. I don't claim to be an expert, but we have a group set up at the state level called Mass Permit and Regulatory Office. They receive grant applications every year. In fact, it was just recapitalized to the tune of $500 million. So there's money there and opportunity if, in fact, this monies, these infrastructure investments from the town and the state will yield jobs on the other side. If there's businesses that will be freed up, if you think that having the water treatment plant, which is what the town administrator had mentioned, and obviously that must have been something that constituents have brought up, if that will yield other opportunities, then that's something that the state could conceivably partner with you on in grant form. Getting ahead of myself there a little bit, but and then once again I say that Karen Conrad from the Planning Commission is much more literate at this stuff than I am, and that's one thing about, I know what I know, and I also know exactly what I don't know, and that's why I have the professionals here. So I don't know, Karen, if you... Yeah, I want to take...
Oh, I'll stand, I'm good. Thank you, Peter and Eleni. To dovetail off of what Eleni mentioned, the Planning Commission has a ton of resources that we can offer to the town, essentially free of charge. By being a member community of our commission, you are entitled to a certain number of technical assistance hours each month. We just completed a build-out analysis of the town, and we do the flyovers through our pictometry product, and you've just renewed with us for the MyMap product as well. So John and your staff are very familiar with that. So we could look at the build-out analysis in greater detail, because right now, if I'm reading it correctly, it does not show it's developable, but it could be labeled as developed because it's a town-owned. So that's a nuance we can work through. But to Eleni's point, we could help with environmental assessment testing money, which would be a grant to the town because you're grant eligible. We could do transportation studies to help figure out, get to that highest and best use. We can look at water and wastewater in ways that we have data that we could share with Mass Development and the house doctor consultant that they were to choose. So we're an excellent partner with Mass Development. I actually used to work at Mass Development 100 years ago. So we are, the four of us are very familiar with what we can do for one another in a community and for a specific parcel. So thank you.
I'd like to ask how much, we're focused on the one parcel. How much further can you go in perhaps helping us on the whole intersection and what to do with other parcels that are there in the area? I know not on economic development, I've stepped down and let some new faces on there this year. But you've been here before, Peter, I believe.
I said that as we were walking up the stairs.
You helped lead us through, I think we got the town zoned an economic target area.
Correct.
Years ago. And a couple of years ago, Zeph Moulton sent a guy over to kind of help us in directions, and one of the things what he was saying was you need to look at several areas in your town and figure out what you'd want. And obviously the downtown village area, they like to call it, I call it downtown, but was one, and that intersection was another area that we would want to take probably a larger, broader picture look at. And if you go down there now, it's a real mix-up of things. It is a little bit of everything, and really, we're right on the border of Rowley, and so to me, I've always thought that Rowley should be involved somewhat with us in that big picture. And I believe your board works, takes a better picture if you're working regional, sometimes I think.
Yeah, we can collaboratively work with them. I mean,
so perhaps, for me, looking at a bigger picture also, and not just the one parcel, that intersection of 133 and 95.
and that's something that Karen and her team can assist with. And once again, that would be something conceivably that is eligible to move to the Mass Permit and Regulatory Office. And it's a competitive grant application process, so it will require some strategic thinking, which you've got strategic thinkers here, so I think that you're going to be fine. we will work with you all on that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys coming in tonight. There was some great stuff that we heard about what's available to the town, and I don't know if we were aware that all of that was available, but from a developer standpoint, do you guys have like a pool of developers that you always, are in conversation with, and you can ask them about? I'm on the Economic Development Committee, and the way that we've been approaching it kind of, today is we'll call up developers and say, hey, are you guys interested? And we always hear, it's not high density, and retailers are really focusing on the 95 belt down in Burlington or so. But I don't know if you had a pool of developers that you could share that.
No, that's a great question. So we do, actually. So we do a lot of developer tours. So depending on, we'll sometimes we'll set them up, or we'll work in conjunction with the community if they're setting one up. We do have an active mailing list and email database of developers, plus developers that we just work with, because we, like I said, we do a lot of financing of real estate. And so what we'll do is, if we're doing a developer tour, we reach out to them, we let them know that it's happening. Sometimes we work a lot with real estate brokers, because they're always talking to bankers who are talking to us. We get a lot of our work through those connections.
Sure.
So, happy to share information. If we've had people call and say, do you know any developers that might be interested in doing, 16 units of housing? And I'll say, well, let me ask around. And sometimes I can come up with 2 or 3 names and say, why don't you just call them? And, developers are kind of used to getting cold called on stuff, so they're usually pretty willing to do that. We can make an introduction.
Sure.
So even if it's not specifically for this parcel, if there's something else, you can always call anyone on the North team. So I should have said that I'm part of the North Regional team. My office is based in Lawrence. Our Mass Development's based in Boston, but we have 5 regional offices. This is part of the North Region, which constitutes about 52 communities. We have 4 members of our team. We have an investment banking member who does most nonprofit bond work. So when all of your great hospitals and private schools and other folks are refinancing their debt, we do that. We have a commercial lender who does all the lending for us. And we have a business development person who is really one of the smartest and talented people in economic development, and has probably done every economic development deal in the North Shore at some point, or been involved with them. And we're co-located with MOBD, with Peter and Maria. So, and Karen's up the street, so we do talk a lot. And so at any time, any of you should feel free to call any of us on the North Regional team. If you go to massdevelopment.com, you can click on North Region. You can find out all of our contact information. And we're always here for questions. People call and ask questions. And my view on this, and I know it's Peter and Karen and Maria's, is if I don't know the answer, I'll find out who I should send you to. Because chances are, between us, we'll figure it out pretty quickly. And we'll send you at least to the right person.
Okay, great.
But we're happy to share anything on specific developers.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And then without getting into too much detail, you talked about RFP versus RFI process. RFP sounds like if you have an idea of what you want for
Exactly.
use, right?
Yeah, it's better. They are more successful the more tailored they can be.
Okay.
So if you're saying we're putting out an RFP for a ground lease, because maybe you want to keep it for affordable housing, or we're going to put out an RFP to sell this property with the goal of it being an industrial use or a mixed-use development, the more it tends to be more successful. You'll get better quality applicants
Gotcha.
or responders, and of course, in the end, you don't have to accept any of them, but after a while, what happens is that we have found that at other properties, particularly in gateway cities like Haverhill and Lawrence and Lowell, is if you keep RFPing a property over and over, the developer community just kind of stops looking at it, and it becomes a little stale. The RFIs are basically saying, we've got an industrial piece of property. What you got? What do you think? And sometimes they can be very effective. Like I said up in Salisbury recently, that was very effective. there's a little bit of mixed opinion in the economic development world. Some people feel like developers are like, well, why should I tell you what I want to do there? You know, I'm kind of showing my hand a little bit.
Sure.
But I think with some tailoring and the right encouragement and getting it marketed, the RFI properly, you can get some pretty interesting ideas that come through the door.
Okay, great. Oh,
Yeah.
that's good to know. Awesome, yeah. Thank you.
I may have missed it, but I know, I have a friend who's on the Board of Selectmen in Salisbury.
Mhm.
Said they've lived for the last 5 or 6 or 7 years on grants.
Yep.
So do you all offer, either through Merrimack Valley, or do you offer grant writing services, or is that something that
We
would
don't
do?
offer specific grant writing services. That is probably the one thing we don't do, at least to my knowledge. But if you wanted me to find out, I could. Again, sometimes I'll find an occasional time I'll say, well, actually, we might be helpful with that. But I will say that if there's a specific grant you are looking at, you're always welcome to touch base with someone at Real Estate Services, because a lot of the folks on that team are economic development professionals, formerly of other communities, or from EOHED or from another part of state government. And sometimes they just have some interesting insights about how to shape your application that may be helpful and allow it to be a little more successful.
I can tell you that we can
And
assist
Karen's group
writing
too.
your grant or working in conjunction with Mike's planning staff, and we can collaborate. We actually learned today that there's a grant out there for which something like a sidewalk inventory would be eligible. So we may try to pull all 15 of our communities and try to do that sort of in an economy of scale. I know you've just completed or about to complete streets, so that would be perfect. So I'm steering off the current conversation, but the idea is we tend to know about the grants when they hit and what they can do for.
Thank you.
Mike?
Yeah, RFI, I'm not familiar with that term.
It's really just a request for information. It basically you would put out you would put something, could be in the central register, and put out there that says, we're requesting information about what you would do here. And so it has some generic criteria, and then developers come back and say, here's, you would get a response the same way you would for an RFP. Some people call it's not there's the RFQ, which is kind of pre-screening them for an RFP and things, but
Does that meet 30B standards for disposing of
so you
real
don't,
property?
so you can't actually dispose of the property. You can't select someone through the RFI process.
Okay.
So basically what would happen is you would get your responses back, and let's say that you get 2 that are very interesting and for an industrial reuse, and someone has a really creative idea for housing, and someone else has a creative idea for a mixed-use development. That would inform then how you'd want to structure your RFP. So let's say you're like, you know what, the most promising responses are from the industrial. We will now put out a formal RFP through that process, through the bidding process, for industrial reuse with these criteria. So it allows you to sort of refine what you would like to see on the property if you're not doing kind of maybe a more robust community input process or something like that.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else on the board?
This is certainly great information for us, because, Gary and I it's been 9 years almost, Gary, you and I. And this is, I think, one of the first times we've really acquired, a significant piece of property, and I think it's a good opportunity for us to really learn as much as we possibly can before we go ahead and do anything, what's out there, what's available, and, I know I'm way ahead in suggesting some uses, but those are just some ideas to throw out there. But I think we have a great opportunity in front of us, and it's time for us to partner with the state and agencies to help us through this process, to do it right, in all honesty. And whether that's perpetual income, or one-time shot, or a multi-use, whatever that is, it is. But I think we were, as a board, we're just kind of kicking it around. And I think, I said, well, I think the next step is let's reach out to Peter and his team and see what's available for us, because again, this is like one of the first times we've really done this, and so.
So if I may, we are in the process of assessing, the value of this property. And I'm not sure if we'll get an update on that tonight or not, but so this property is certainly going to have much more value okay, if we can get rid of the, what do we call it, a spike strip?
Yeah.
You know, something along those lines, and take possession of that property. If we don't, you know, I think that piece of land is certainly, you know, devalued, you know, by X amount. So to be specific, I think that's our first step, and I'd like to hear what your recommendation would be to maybe help us along with that, because we do have an owner of that piece of land who has decided that he does not want to negotiate or help the town with acquiring, you know, that small strip of land. So we're kind of
Yeah, any
bind
kind
with
of
that right
swap
now.
or anything, yeah.
So I'd like to see if you guys have, and I know I'm putting you on the spot, you might not have any feedback whatsoever right now until you do some research or whatever it may be. But I think it's that's really our first step here in really determining what we can do with this property. You know, without knowing what we have, I think it's very hard to plan, okay? So do you have any recommendations?
It sounds like that owner is pushing you towards an eminent domain taking
Certainly
purposely.
has
And
popped
certainly,
it up
and
right
you
now.
have, through the, you know, through this board, you have that ability, authority, however the term that you see fit. And if it's a less contiguous parcel, you only have, this is a relatively small town, and you're only gonna get tracts of land like this that come available very infrequently, once a generation, so, I mean,
Well, very true. It's not a relatively small town. It is a small town.
it's bigger than my town, so.
So this might not pop up again for a long while, which is why we're very uneducated to this process, right?
No, and-
Because we don't get this opportunity very often, and when we do, we have to do it, you know, well, you know, and we have to make educated decisions on what we're going to be doing with it, right? So, like I said, I think that's our first step here, and again, if you could give us some insight into, you know, specifically that, I think it's really that is our first step. It's a small piece of land, but it's causing some real rift.
But it makes it less contiguous. I've never actually encountered it in 18 years, so it's the very first time that I've had to look at something like that.
No.
You know what your options are. I mean, they're not pleasant, but they're certainly there for economic development purposes. And that would, I think, you know, without knowing too much about the parcel, it's really hard to say, but.
Well, if we did have to, you know, take possession or at least try to, I mean, is there any help on your end that you could provide?
Not at the state level.
No, not at the state
But
level.
remember one thing, I work directly for the state. They're both quasi-public agencies. So at the state level, there's no funding unless there was a larger plan in place for acquisition and streetscaping or, you know, some adaptive reuse. And because the town would own it, at that point, MassWorks could conceivably be in play. I don't know that it's ever been used this way, but I see no reason why MassWorks can only be granted to a community, and it has to be either municipal or state-owned parcel that you're putting the MassWorks dollars into, so that would certainly fill that criteria. So, you know, understanding that as you push through the process with this, obviously the best thing is that you and that owner come to an agreement and you're able to, you know, consummate a real estate transaction. But if not, continue forward with the planning process. And then I think you have a very fair grant application to say that if we have this, we have a contiguous parcel that is much more valuable, highest and best use has just been exponentially increased for the town. And I think that's an area that the state might look at. And I don't run that group, but I certainly I interact with them often. It is, we all fall under Secretary Jay Ash, so I think, you know, it's something that more of a common sense approach. It sounds like it would actually fit, but it's not something that you hear of very often, so I can't speak with
And
certainty.
we don't have either necessarily consulting for eminent domain takings, but I will say that thinking about the lack of ownership of the parcel shouldn't hold you back from thinking about the transportation planning early, simply because some of that will drive what the potential end use can really be. And I'll give you an example of that is a parcel, a really large parcel we've been working on in the city of Lawrence has some odd connectivity issues. And one of the things they had been talking about was, well, maybe we can kind of carve off the front parts and redevelop that. But their ultimate goal was really to have a larger retailer, maybe like a big box, like a Home Depot or a Lowe's or something like that. And it meets a lot of the other requirements. But as we started to think about transportation planning, and they were working with someone, they said, turns out that as you go through this, they need X amount of clearance, they need this, and until you do that the idea of doing that other kind of end use is not a real option. And it also precluded them, which was a good thing early on, from knowing that they should not sell off those front 2 acres. That having done that, it would have precluded everything else in the back. So they're thinking, so now they're in the process, even though they don't, there are 2 other people that own some of those parcels. They're surrounded by a couple owners, as well as a neighborhood, which is a little bit more challenging. But they're engaging now a transportation planner to say, okay, if we're gonna do X or Y, which is our goal, how does this whole transportation network, this whole intersection, sort of like you said, need to be completely reconfigured? So still thinking about that, even though you don't have the complete end use, but you may have a concept, like we think it's gonna be industrial, you should still, continue the process, even though you don't have possession.
Mr. Chair.
Doug, did you have a question first?
I was thinking of it later.
Okay.
If, I'm not following, as David said, been at this for a while, but I'm not following just what transportation planning is. And as a question I'll put on my crazy hat, as David said, sometimes he's crazy. And if we start talking about the eminent domain in that, does the state ever partner with towns in that, as if perhaps the state had a need for some of that land? I know there has been talk in the past of the state putting a park and ride in some area off from Georgetown. Now, if something of that sort went in, I know we wouldn't be seeing any dollar signs there, but it could possibly lead to development of the rest of the area on a mixed-use type of thing. If you had parking, they might need a restaurant here or there or something of that sort that could further bring in revenues. So is there anything to look on at that end of it where perhaps getting the use of it with, I don't believe it was actually laid out as a spike strip. The state helped us put that road in that's there, and how that got left out during all of that zoning, I don't know. But, so that's, I guess, if we understood the question. I'm not quite understanding what transportation planning is, and then is there ever any help in perhaps in acquiring eminent domain if we partnered with the state for something?
Well, I think any transportation planning we do would be to inform and to not curtail or do anything to harm the study of the highest and best use of the land. So it sounds like we should work in conjunction with Mass Development, provide data, have a conversation with the state as it relates to what they may need, but also to understand how what we know could inform and educate the analysis part of the process.
So part of, for an example of that would be, if you knew that you were going to put an industrial building here that was going to bring an additional 5,000 cars per day.
Yes.
That's the kind of analysis they would look at. They would say,
Okay,
what would be the egress? What would be the traffic flow? What would that mean for the sort of surrounding roads? Maybe you need, if you're gonna have 5,000 cars there a day, maybe you have to then now, no matter what, take that spike strip, because there's no way to build it out. If it's only going to be 20 units of housing, well, then that changes the transportation analysis to some extent. So just really thinking about that, as you said, sort of as a whole area, might be something to think about. And that's what we're looking at in the Lawrence parcel for this next phase, which is if they want to put in a big box retailer, we know the traffic counts that those usually bring. What does that mean for the secondary roads and the primary roads? And also just, tractor trailers. So we don't want the tractor trailer on the neighborhood roads, so where would that form of egress?
Yeah, we've got a guy
Where's that
behind
kind
you
of
right there that understands that greatly.
Okay, so those are the kinds, so those are the kinds of issues that would be kind of talked about.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I have one last question. In terms of process, if we do get to a point where we have an idea, we figure out this land thing and we want to implement something, are we assigned someone who will step us through a process, or, you know, how does that work? I mean,
So as I mentioned, we have that request for information
Yeah.
kind of coming up, which is a non-application application process, as I'm
Right.
going to call it. If the project moves to the next round, I don't know. I don't work for real estate services, so I'm not sure how selection will go. If everyone's gets in, or if certain things are kind of staged, I'm not sure how that's going to work. But exactly, so you get assigned we have for the North Region, Sumner Real Estate Services, Amanda Mayer, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight, who would exactly becomes essentially your partner project manager,
Okay.
and works out, you map out the entire scope of work together. She helps manage the consultant in conjunction with you. It becomes basically a partnership team to work our way through.
All right, great. Because obviously, you know, we're going to be very uneducated about process, paperwork. things
You
like
are
that.
not,
So we
this,
need
and
to
that's
get
part of our,
something, so-
all of our roles, which is that we know that many communities don't have the chance to be doing it all the time, and so when they wanna do it, they wanna do it right. And for us to try and help connect you to the resources that you need, to consult with, to be as successful as you can be, cause ultimately, all of our jobs is to benefit all of your communities, to get as much economic development as we can, for the Commonwealth, so.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Oh. is there something?
No, I'll just make a comment. I know that we've been kicking a can down the road for some time, and we are at that point where I think we've exhausted our town's resources, so it's good to have the state and Merrimack Valley, your services, to help us to the next level, get over that speed bump into the next level, to decide what to do with this piece of property. It could be, we just sell it.
And that might be the highest and best, it might be, exactly, that might be the best thing in the end.
Right.
Yeah,
So it'd be good to have other eyes looking at it to help us through.
great. Well, thanks for inviting us here today.
Yeah,
appreciate
thank
all
you
the
so much, and your team.
information.
Thank you so much for taking the time tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And we'll be in touch too. at some
Yeah,
point. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Did you get out of here?
Take it easy, pal.
Well, I'm still up. I know you have a brief update for us.
Okay.
I'll start with Elm Street first. Elm Street is ahead of schedule. We're looking to be finished with the project within 3 weeks, so the middle of October.
Okay.
Right now, they're putting loam down on the sides of the road, and then they'll be back through to put the top coat of pavement, and then they'll do the top coat of sidewalk, and the signs, the markings in the roadway, and all the handicap ramps will be done by that time, so.
Anybody who had, I know David had a question. Anybody who had their lawn ripped up a little bit by
That's what the lawn's for.
Exactly. That's all going to be
Yep.
replanted. Okay.
Yep.
Good. All right.
Just a quick question.
Yes.
Yeah, I know that there was a concern by a few citizens about the guardrail.
Yep,
You guys taking care of that? Yeah?
Yes, I'm gonna be talking to the few people that are concerned about it. I've talked to the engineer, and I'll give them the answer that the engineer gave me, and
Okay.
talk to them and take care of that situation.
Okay. Isn't that supposed to oxidize regardless? Just
Yes, it will,
just like the school, it looks brown, right? So it kind of blends.
well,
in.
that's a different type of, that's core 10 it's called. This is galvanized.
Oh,
The
okay.
galvanized will dull. That's one of the options is the core 10.
Gotcha. Okay.
So,
All right. Cool. Thank you.
Again, numbers. How are we okay on budget?
we're okay right now. So,
Yep. Okay. Do you foresee there any?
Nothing major.
No. Okay. Okay.
And next is the complete streets. We're gonna be filing with complete streets. We've already been accepted with complete streets. Now we're gonna try for the grant money for the 400,000. So we have a prioritization plan, and there's 15 things on that plan, or should I say there's 21 or 22. And we had to pick 3 that we were gonna pick for this coming year for the 400,000. The 3 that we picked were add pedestrian crossing signs that you go up and you push the button and the light flashes to let people cross the street. So that would go in at East Main Street near the post office, and West Main Street, and possibly the one East Main Street by the park and ride. So those 4 would be installed. The second project that we looked at was to replace the sidewalk from the post office up to Nelson Street. So that sidewalk would all be new. And then the third project would be to add sidewalk from Nelson Street to Noonan's. So there'd be a new sidewalk there. And it also included a portion of Nelson Street to have sidewalk go to the park and ride, I mean, not the park and ride, the rec pack that's gonna be going in. So that way there, if anybody was at the rec pack, they could walk down to, Elm Street, they could walk down to Central Street, or they could, go up to Noonan's, either way, on the path or on the sidewalk. So that's the first year, that's the money that we're going for, that 400,000.
Great.
Excellent.
That's it.
That's it?
Yep.
Questions from the board?
Comment, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Elm Street looks great. Guys doing a good job. I've been trying to get down there to, drive by in the daytime. And
Newport's a good company. I've
Yeah.
had no
Really nice
issues
job.
with them. It's been, a good working experience with them.
Right.
So,
So at the beginning, from 97, as you come, where where you're making the T now intersection,
Yep.
if you take a right there, on the right, it's kind of a ditch there. Are you still putting water pipe in there? Is that going to be leveled off at some
that won't
point?
be leveled off. That will be, it's gonna be regraded. It won't be as steep as it is now.
Yeah, because it falls off pretty far. I was
Yep.
like, somebody
was-
comes around there in the snow.
It will be better than it was, but it was like that before.
Was it that bad?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that was the only area that looked a little hairy to me, but
Steve?
So what are the plans for that area that isn't accessible to Elm? Now you created the T's, so that big
That's
piece
gonna
there-
be grass area.
That's grass area. Is there any way that you guys can, if you do the T-axis across the street, is there any way we can transplant that huge tree over to that
I talked
side?
about that. I talked to an arborist about that.
Yeah,
And he said the chances of that living and the expense in trying to move that, it would be just better off just planting a new tree.
really, okay.
Yep.
So are there plans to do that in that area, or
Yes.
on
We could-
Elm Street,
it-
basically?
We could definitely plant something there, yes.
Gotcha, okay.
I just don't wanna plant something that's gonna get too large, that's gonna
Can't
interfere with the
obstruct
wires and.
right, you're not going to be able to see anything.
Yep, okay, awesome, thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
Well, I know that I ran into Peter one day and we took a tour of the whole, I felt like the street felt like it was more narrow than it was, but it's not. It's just because of the curbing
Yeah.
on each side that makes it feel that way.
Plus, it's a little high because there's another grade,
Yeah, well, it's higher
another
up.
coat's got to go on,
Everything
right?
was flat before.
Right, yeah.
you know?
Yeah, the roadway before was 22 feet wide in some areas, but it was narrow in some areas, and this is a consistent 24 feet now.
Slow people
Yeah,
down.
I know.
Yeah, we don't, that's one of the reasons that we try to bring the road in. 24 is plenty wide enough for the buses, the vehicles that are on the road. So,
Awesome.
Looks good.
thank you.
Thanks, Pete.
Have a good night.
Yeah, thanks,
Appreciate
Peter.
it. Have a good one. All right. All right, we're gonna try to get through some quick appointments. Craig Babius? Hi, Craig, how are you?
Hi, good evening.
All right, so we have a request for appointment to the Rec Path Committee. Craig, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Moved here to Georgetown in 1999, and other than 2 years, I've been in Georgetown. Right now, I live down on Moulton Street,
Okay.
and I've coached soccer for about 9 years with GAA. I was on the board of directors there with Josh for 3 years.
Okay.
Kids are in high school, kind of looking for some way to give back to the town and do some volunteering. And my neighbor Bill Hastings gave me a call and said, "Hey, we have an opening. Would you be interested?" So here I am.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Right, questions from the
Any
board?
Volunteers.
Just a general question, I don't think it's for Craig, but how many other openings are there? Is this filling the final opening?
It's filling, Jeff Wade's position.
Jeff Wade's position, okay. And so do we have a full committee now?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So Craig, as far as background, what's your occupation?
I'm a controller.
Okay. Accounting side?
Yep.
Thanks. Good, so you'll keep the costs down, that's good. Keep those guys in the number. Only kidding. All right, no, I'm glad you're stepping up. It sounds great. We really need some more work done on the rec path, obviously, to see it to completion. It's gonna be a lifelong project after going to some of those meetings at Merrimack Valley Planning. It's like a 30-year process. We gotta keep getting on that tip and get put 15 years out. It's crazy, but no, thank you for stepping up.
Sure. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, do we have a motion?
Sure, Mr. Chair, I'll move that we appoint Craig Mabius to the Recreational Path Committee for a term to expire June 30, 2018.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right?
Thank you very much.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night.
Thank you very much for coming up.
Thanks
Appreciate
for
it.
stepping up.
Make sure you stop by and see the town clerk to get sworn into.
Okay.
All right.
All right, we also have a reappointment of Bill Hastings. Bill in the audience?
No, he wasn't, it was just a reappointment. He's on the committee. It's just,
Yep.
it was when we missed, when we did the appointments.
Okay. Does anybody need to-
I move that we appoint Bill Hastings, or reappoint Bill Hastings to the Recreational Path Committee for a term to expire June 30, 2018.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Congratulations to Bill, and Bill, thanks again for donating some of your time. All right, and we have an approval of a Class 2 used car sales license. Anybody here for that? No? Well, you know what, we're gonna pass over that one. Until they show up, I'm not gonna approve anything. Okay? All right, all right, why don't we get started? All right, we have some folks from Greenbridge here, if you guys can come up. All right, guys, just hold on one second. So there's a point in time, things we can't vote on. It would have to be something that we kind of pick up this, the difference on something else. All right. So thank you again for attending a meeting. As we, with our ongoing efforts to try to improve this for you guys. So we're gonna have to have an open discussion here. We had something transpire as early as this morning. Okay, so unfortunately, it comes down to this. So as everybody knows, we've had a open and full discussion about the fact that the current company that is operating here in town, we have a clause, in there that if someone else moves in, they can reduce payment by 50%. All of us felt that that wasn't an issue, as the spirit of that clause, really didn't apply to you. They are firmly disagreeing on that case, which is somewhat surprising to us. I can't say they're disagreeing, but they're being a little bit more demanding than what we can provide. I.e., hey, we'll do this for you if you do this for us, and I don't agree with it. It's something we'll have to pick up at a later time. But with that being said, we're in a position that we are now looking at a situation that our current revenue, based on the agreements, will be cut by 50%. And I know that you have come before this board to tell us that you will pick up that 50% if that came around.
That's correct.
Okay? So we have to have an open discussion to make sure we're on the same page, because obviously that is going to highly affect
the way we vote, okay, the host agreement and the letter of non-opposition. There are also probably some other questions that people have. Different people have had different concerns. Okay, so as much as I would like to just say, hey, you know, we're ready to vote, the expectation was that, you know, that would have been taken care of, but it hasn't been, okay? Mike, at any point in time, if you want to chime in on anything, please do. So, when you guys mentioned that you will pick up the 50%, my first question for you is this. We have a ongoing scale, okay, with the other business, okay, where every year there's more and more money as they grew their sales, okay, that they were paying to the town. When you say you're gonna pick up that 50% that is gonna be reduced, are you talking about picking up that for the full 5-year term of their host agreement?
In all probability, yes. I don't know. Refresh me as to what the full scale, my concern, I think, is if it's their contribution to the town is based on production, and you're going to allow them to go into recreational sales. I don't know what exposure that might bring to bear.
Well, I guess from the standpoint of picking up that 50%, I think it's the base rate, if I'm not mistaken, that I would like to at least see, you know, be taken up. The percentage of sales, you know, might be something we're just gonna have to absorb ourselves, if I'm not mistaken.
I would
But-
think.
It's for medicinal.
Right,
Yes.
so that's the
It
point.
is medicinal.
Okay,
right.
if it's medicinal
So-
only, we're not happy about it, but we can accept that. I mean, obviously, that's burdening us a fair amount on something that we don't think is
Correct.
should be our burden. I think we
Correct.
all, a number of you all agree. I don't think it's right. But as I said on 3 meetings ago, it was not my intention to put the town in a position where they were revenue neutral.
Well, and that's,
The answer is, we're here to work with you and make it work for you.
yeah,
So we can work with that.
okay. And you understand the terms of that agreement? You've seen that host agreement?
I think is my recollection. I actually, to be honest with you, I thought after the last meeting I was paying less attention to it. 'Cause
All right,
it's,
so why don't we start there?
200,000 or
Because
300,000.
I need to make sure you guys understand the agreement, okay? And you know what you're telling us, all right? Because we're gonna hold you, you know, to anything that you give us a nod for, right? So Doug, why don't you bring us up to speed on the current host agreement, so these gentlemen understand what it is.
The first year is $100,000.
Payable, on what date?
Well, 1 year after they opened for business, which was, they opened for business, I think it was the beginning of May. So then they have 30 days from that date, or 30 days after the year anniversary
Okay.
to provide that $100,000.
Okay, which is where we're at right now, it's their first year, okay? Like, sorry.
And then the second part of that is for any retail sales over $4 million, they'll provide 2.5% of the gross retail sales of $4,001 and above. The second year, $150,000 payable again that year, 30 days after the anniversary.
Mhm.
Okay. With 3% of gross retail sales over $4 million for the second year of operation. And in the third and succeeding years 3 through 5, it's a guarantee of $200,000 plus 3% of gross retail sales over $4 million for the third year of operation. I mean, third, fourth, and fifth years of operation.
Okay. So, I mean, obviously, the largest part is 3 through 5, you know, where $200,000 is the payment, in which they're gonna reduce it by $100,000, which, you know, we're looking to ask you guys if you are going to make us whole on that portion, okay, plus whatever you agree to on your host agreement, okay? Now, my attitude is, they have to make us whole and then provide, their revenue in addition to making us whole on that agreement, okay? Any comments from the board, pertaining to this stipulation? Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I think, based on the latest, I think this is the latest version of the host agreement that was submitted. It does say that. It says the company will pay to the town the following sums for each year this agreement is in effect. The amount, if any, by which payments owed to the town by HP, which is Healthy Farms, pursuant to the HP agreement, are reduced as a result of the operation of cultivation, RMD in town, and then their own contribution. So I think that's stated quite clearly here that, I think there should be a little more specific language on that, rather than, it's kind of blanketed, because it doesn't, right now, that's saying everything. That's the base plus any additional, those charges. So maybe you want to add a little more language to that to be a little more specific.
It actually came from your town council, but that's okay.
Yeah,
I can-
again, I would
I think
suggest, conceptually, yes, right. I think we're trying to get to a finished document is what, at least that's the goal here, right? Wouldn't it be?
I mean, we thought this is a worst-case scenario. It burdened us on 3 through 5 years. I think it's wrong. I think we all agree it's probably wrong. We're not competing with them. I guess I would say to you all, I'd agree with it. I'd accept it. I'd like some support with respect to any of the discussions that we had on, nebulous that it was, are we growing medically, are we growing recreational? If we can kind of push that aside and make that a non-issue. And again, we've changed our attitude one iota. I mean, we are building out a medical marijuana facility. I just look at the way the world is changing with regard to marijuana, and I just, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell where the world's going to be in 2 or 3 years. If we all can agree to just let her do what we're talking about, and we can accept that. We've run the numbers on what David just shared. I can accept it. I think it's, I won't say draconian, it's expensive.
Sure.
It's a big number. It's bigger
Well,
than
which is why I want to make it clear.
I understand,
Okay, I mean,
I appreciate it,
it
Mr.
might
Chairman.
say that in the agreement, but, the agreement that can be left there if we don't actually talk about it.
I understand,
So
Mr.
we
Chairman,
need to-
Here's the other issue with this.
Yes.
Is that there could be some limitations put on your businesses where those payments to the towns are capped, where we could be exposed with this 50%, because that could push you over,
I
right?
understand that too.
Right, so the town is taking some risk on that side too. And, so, and side issue, another issue in all of this is, I still think it's our responsibility to go back to HP and fight that and say, no, we're not, this should be on the town to do that. And if we lose, then you're on the hook.
If I may, Selectman Surface, I will tell you that is gonna happen. Because I am not happy about it.
Then we would appreciate that.
As a partner of the town, I don't think they're acting accordingly.
Can I ask for
I
clearance?
am not happy about it right now. So what I will tell you is that we are going to stringently go back to them, and we are gonna make our feelings felt.
I would appreciate that.
And we can't promise you anything.
I understand.
All right, because, unfortunately, black and white, sometimes, trumps anything that, we want to verbally come out with, right?
As I have
So-
said repeatedly, my intention is to not to put the town at risk in terms of a revenue neutral proposition. That doesn't make sense, and it wouldn't be fair, and I don't want to put you in that position. At the same token, I would very, very much appreciate your being a more assertive to
Yep.
Healthy Farm, because I just don't think it makes a lot of sense.
Well, believe me, we will certainly do that, as we have driven to get to this point. Believe me, it has not been this side who hasn't tried, to push this through. So, with that being said, Gary.
I was just trying to get some clarity on what specifically you're not happy with. That's, because you said you're not happy about something, you're going back to K&P about it.
Yeah,
And-
I was the
just
one that
trying to
brought
get
that
some-
up. Right, was that we're getting indication that that Healthy Farms is saying, because we're letting a competitor in,
Yeah, okay,
that
I'm
they're
reading that.
able to cut their payment to us by 50%. I think that's there is no competition. They're not selling it here. You're not interfering with their dispensary. You're selling it in other communities. as medicinal marijuana. So I think we, meaning through our attorneys, need to sit with HP and say, no, we would expect the full payment, and if not, we're free to do what we want with another company, and they're not in competition with you. So I think we should defend our position, is what I was trying to say. So that they may not have to make that kick in that,
Right. We're
balance.
still gonna, but there are also other additions, to their request, Gary, if they do.
Yeah, I
Is
think
that
I
what you
briefly
just
had,
got, was this document?
I briefly had
We
time
just got
to,
again this morning.
Yes, I was gonna
So
say, I'm
there
not,
are other recommendations that they're making in additions that we cannot agree to. Cannot, it's not even a question,
I
we
think
cannot agree to.
You're right, and if you get down to it, Joe, you could go back to when they were here in front of us, it's tape recorded, it's what was the purpose of that agreement, and that's basically said in that letter. I mean, whether that letter is signed or not, I mean, that was the purpose of the agreement that we had. It was for no other competition within the
Absolutely.
town on dispensing.
Which has been our stance.
So I mean, to me, that letter is worthwhile, I don't even, but.
I'm sorry to interject.
From Kate.
Up until this letter, Healthy Farms was of the position that Greenbridge did not constitute competition.
Yeah, so I don't know why we need to force them into
All of
it.
a sudden, we have these other requests.
Yeah.
I'm very upset by it.
Well,
Disappointed in a rather non-neighborly action.
And that is a good term for it. It's, when we have businesses that come into town, we would think they're partners, that, it should be a win-win for everybody, that everybody is doing well. And yeah, it is non-neighborly, and it's certainly not a partnership in my eyes right now. And I think they're certainly, being combative, so.
Well, for the record, though,
Yes.
what we received was something from our attorney, not an actual request from HP to say, if you sign this agreement, we're gonna cut our payment by 50%. Have we received that notification?
No.
No. Okay.
Well, I mean,
They
technically.
have
Verbally?
verbally held to that. Doug and I have talked to them.
Okay.
I talked with them,
Okay.
and, but
Well, Mike, their counter proposals basically is exactly that. To me, yes, they have. Their counter proposal specifically outlines what they are looking for, and basically saying this. We received this from you. All right, this is our counter proposal. Okay, in which this is what we want, and if it's not going to happen, then we are not signing it. And the counter proposal, okay, has again things on it that we cannot even approach, here at this board.
That's why I was shocked by this letter they want us. Why do we have to put a letter together? We have an agreement. An agreement specifically says we won't
put
stand
the
in the
letter.
way.
they
put the
said
letter
they would
forward.
agree to the side letter. That,
That's our letter, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
but they wanted something in return. Exact,
You open negotiations.
and they said, we want broader assurances that you will support us in recreation.
Okay, so that's a change from their original stance that what was in their agreement that says we won't stand in the way of getting them recreational marijuana.
But it goes far beyond this
Yeah, it
board.
goes way,
Right.
Way
beyond
beyond that.
Right. Well, I mean, again, it goes back to the point where we're not the license granting authority. We're just trying to put an agreement together that says contingent upon you getting your license and doing business, this is what's gonna happen.
But what they are not saying that. They are saying if we agree to this,
We don't have
you
that
have to-
authority, period.
well,
again,
they
and
took,
that's what I've
they
said.
took
Yeah.
They don't have the authority.
non-opposition and raised it to support.
Right.
Meaning we support them at the state level, we support them at the planning board level here, that we would support them at, if any zoning laws had to be changed, that we would support them.
So this is all verbal though? They haven't put that in writing?
No, it's in writing.
Well, haven't we seen? I haven't seen it.
You have a copy.
Was it an email? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, okay.
Again, the email came this morning,
Yeah,
so it's.
I didn't
it's,
look at the emails yet. I just
No,
looked at this.
the KP letter came this afternoon at 4 o'clock. Their letter came last Thursday,
Maybe I'm getting those mixed up.
We
Okay.
have it, yeah.
which
Okay.
I sent directly
Okay.
to KP
KP, and then they
for
responded.
review.
Okay.
And KP iterates in their response, each of the.
So we haven't
Yes.
seen that. We haven't
No,
seen that.
we have.
Do I have?
It talks about we need to support bylaw changes and
That's not gonna-
planning board, and if they needed anything, you know.
Do they realize this is an
change
elected
from a
board that could change?
nonprofit To a profit status, right?
Well, that's another.
This is an
point. I
elected
mean,
board that could change the next election.
Well, they wanna change from a nonprofit to profit and wanna support there, and there's a whole lot
I
of
haven't seen
unknowns
it,
about
okay.
that.
All right, that's my fault.
So, I mean, with that being said, I mean, we're not in a position to approve it, yes.
A reasonable request.
Can I, well, so what is your position tonight? I guess, where are we? If
So
you could clear
tonight,
that up.
I really wanted to, well, originally, I was hoping just to have Healthy Farms on board, okay, we were gonna be able to vote this. But now this is transition to this conversation, okay, to make sure that everyone's under, agreement, okay, on what the current host agreement says. And, what Greenbridge will get behind, right? I think, if you are on board with that, okay, again, Mike, we had, talked a little bit, are we in a position then to vote this if we do have that agreement?
Well, have which agreement?
Well, the agreement pertaining to the revenue that they're,
Yeah.
because I think
I mean,
that is the only thing that has been
yes.
holding this up, correct?
Yes.
Because we've been waiting for a letter from Healthy Farms and.
The ideal agreement would not mention Healthy Farms at all.
Right.
If we could have gotten, them to sign our side letter, we wouldn't even need to mention HP in Greenbridge's agreement.
Mhm.
But since they're not being reasonable, I think we need to keep that in there. As
Yep.
long as it's in there and they're committing to make up the difference.
Now let's get back to that. The difference, are we talking the base rate or are we talking all-in rate? Because it's, this per year plus.
Mr. Chairman, based on this
3%
language,
sales,
based on
4%
this language, it's everything.
It's everything.
It's everything.
It's everything.
Yep, the whole thing.
Okay. So we need to clarify that with you guys, that, based on language of the draft host agreement, that 50% is of everything.
Yeah, I can agree with everything, as long as it is on medicinal marijuana. If it's recreation, the problem is that no one knows what they may do, and that gets a little open-ended.
We don't even have
There are
one.
two issues, and granted, they don't have it yet, but that gives us an uncalculable exposure.
Sure.
That's one issue. Secondly, I may suggest this too, because as Doug mentioned, their contract runs, I think we said May to May. We're not going to be in the most egregious definition of competition. We're not competing with them until we actually are opened up.
Mhm.
So I'd hope that we don't have to subsidize their payment until we physically open up.
Until you open or after your first year?
Well, after, I guess would be after our first year, with, that's, they're running concurrent with whatever their agreement is. It doesn't seem right that we would be paying, subsidizing them before we were actually up and running, certainly. We obligated to pay you, though, in the first year that we open up during that 12-month calendar year. I didn't give, they gave you something that they'd pay you in retrospectively for 1 year. I said, we'll pay you quarterly a minimum fee during that first year that we are opened up.
My only problem with that is that we're looking at a December 2018 opening, if that, okay, for you guys, correct? And then a year after that, obviously it brings us to December 2019.
We owe you that so we owe you our monies during 2019.
Right.
We would subsidize their portion in 2019.
That's what I'm saying. So technically,
okay with
we're
that.
waiting 2 years.
Well, they should be
for that.
paying you a
Okay.
full amount until we are.
I know, but listen, we have to.
Yeah, I think.
I don't know.
No,
If,
I know.
You gotta
I
line
don't know
up.
if we're gonna. Yeah, I don't know if they're
That'd
gonna
have
do
to be
it.
between our town council, us, our town council, and Attorney Romano.
In order for them to do the recreational piece, they still have to come back to the town with a new host agreement and a new permit.
Everybody.
So you're covered there. The exposure there is minimal.
Good with that, as long as we
Right.
owe.
Right.
The only,
It's fluid enough that we all know
We
what
really
we're
have to
doing.
separate the
Right.
two,
right,
recreational, because we don't know what's gonna go with recreational. Other than, we do know that they would be required to apply for a license and get a letter of non-opposition or support from the Board of Selectmen, and then go through the whole planning board process to have an amendment to their special permit.
That's fine.
For
It strikes me as, I mean, knowing Attorney Romano, I'm surprised that he thinks that we would be defined as competition.
but listen, look, they already know that you're willing to shell out the money, right?
I understand.
What's the incentive for them to,
Well, that's why, and we came up in good faith saying, we will make sure that the town's
Right.
revenue neutral.
Right.
But I don't want to be held necessarily, I don't want to be held hostage and having to go,
Right.
pay out money that
no, I agree, I'm on your side on
aren't
this issue.
necessarily right to do
Yeah.
so.
Right,
We won't be making retail sales here.
No,
Right.
not at all.
so can I make a suggestion, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Could we go through the host agreement as presented real quick with some questions? I have some questions and some comments.
Absolutely.
And I think we should, try to get this as best as we possibly can for our purposes and not really let HP cloud our agreement with them.
Mm-hmm.
We can fight that, we'll live to fight. We have assurances from them, and I don't think it's fair either, if they're not in competition. But we can fight that issue later.
Correct.
There's time. I think we should try to, in best interest, put something together for these guys to,
I agree with you.
so that we have a clean agreement, and we have our agreement with them, and that's it. And we fight the other issue, we fight the other issue,
David, as you have that printed, why don't, can you take charge of that?
Yeah, sure. All right, so I had some questions. I'll go, being selfish, I'll go through mine first. So I'm hearing that in order for you to make up the difference, that you would want to leave the agreement and not mention just medical, because in the whereas in the beginning, in 3 paragraphs, I plugged in the word medical. So for instance, the company wishes to establish a facility solely for the cultivation and process of cannabis and cannabis products. I put in medical cannabis and cannabis products. So you're saying that because the original intent was, you said at the beginning, you had no intentions, this is all gonna be medical, and I'm going back to my friend Gary here, right, Gary? That we talked about this. So are you saying now that you leave this the way it is without putting the word medical in there because of the assurance that you'll take care of the money if we're out on the HP side? Because if we let this go as it is, you get this agreement, it covers both, medical and
It makes
non-medical.
no distinction.
Right.
It says whatever we are licensed under Massachusetts.
To sell.
To grow.
Right,
Cultivate.
right. Because I think the original, when we first talked, the first
You
week
put
you
the
were in
word
here,
medical in there.
was just medical.
Yes.
And that's why I plugged in medical.
Well, our draft to you didn't have that in there.
Yep.
KP dropped it in there.
Dropped in what, medical? Well, it doesn't have it.
We didn't have medical, no, that's been changed.
Okay, that's been
what we're
changed
looking at
again?
right now.
The latest email you sent me is the one I printed today. and went
No,
through.
I didn't send you anything.
Yeah, last Monday. From
How
Doug
can we
Gause.
go over
last Monday.
something that we
That's
don't
what I asked
have?
today. We don't have the most up-to-date agreement?
Yeah, you should have this one. That has,
Got so many that it's got confusing also.
Well, I talked to Mike about it today, and this is supposedly the most up-to-date one that I have. And it says, whereas the company wishes to establish a facility solely for the cultivation, it doesn't say anything about just medical.
no, it doesn't.
Okay, so I have the right one.
That's the
So
right
I was
one.
wanting to, I had all intentions of coming to this meeting and say, I want medical put in those 3 paragraphs. But you're saying, leave it alone because you're gonna make up that difference.
We don't know.
I mean, I didn't want to be in a position to have to come back to you 2 years hence. The market has changed in a way that, whether it's
Right.
for economic or practicalities,
Right.
that we had to open that up.
Right. Okay. I mean, I can kind of live with that, to be honest, because the bottom line is paragraph 2, section 2 covers us for all the sales, not just medical. So whatever you're licensed to do, we get a piece of it.
Correct.
With the base.
That was the
Okay.
point that
Right.
that Doug had mentioned at 2 meetings earlier, that even if we we're doing things in the recreational side, the town was going to.
We still get
Right,
on.
because we still have to go, he still would have to go through that process.
Right, it's, right, they still have to get the approvals, still have to get the
Right,
license.
right.
This agreement covers just the licensing. So that was my first question. And my second issue is, I definitely will not support, and I don't think it's you guys, but it's page 1, it says, "The company shall make payments to the town in the amounts and under the terms herein the funds. The treasurer of the town will hold the funds in a separate account pursuant to Mass General Laws 44, Section 53A, and otherwise trust to be extended to the Board of Selectmen without further appropriation for the purpose of," and this is where I have my problem, "providing the cost imposed upon the town and the operation of the cultivation of the RMD, such costs to include without limitation to health, safety, effects, and other effects and impacts on the town." This talks about impact. Our agreement with Healthy Farms says it goes into a account, I'm not blaming you guys, goes into an account directed at the will and pleasure of the Board of Selectmen. Why are we putting this, for impact costs? Impact costs were part of the permit. If the chief is here, and he'll fill us in on that, is that he has the ability.
I think KP put that in because of the new act.
Part of the
To
new
protect
act,
the
Okay.
town.
to show the state that what.
But then he says, "The funds shall be used at the town's sole discretion as determined by the Board of Selectmen and according with such purposes."
Just to give you the
So,
out.
so is that the out?
think
That's the
it's a-
question.
Let me
You have to
interject.
report it to the state.
53A
Yep.
is what, if you read that, that's where gift account is.
Okay. So I want to just make sure that if we need to, again, if we need to buy a fire truck, or we need to buy new police cruisers, we can do it. If we need to, whatever it is, develop that piece of land, we can use the money for that at the discretion of the Board of Selectmen. It doesn't have to be, we have to prove that the chief had extra details or extra calls down there, and, that type of stuff. I just want to make sure we can do that. Say it again?
You need to prove that to the state. That's what the new act.
What do you mean? What do you have to prove? We need a fire truck? I mean, I don't get it.
It's right here, if you read KP law, David,
Yep.
yeah,
That's
So
an opinion of KP.
I agreed,
Right.
I agreed, because right behind that, I wrote, what about gifts?
So we can't spend that money unless we have a,
That's what the act says. That's, again, it's open to interpretation.
But that's the thing, it is open
Well,
to
it's so
interpretation.
ambiguous.
And,
Right.
And
you know, I
that's
still
not
think
them,
we're-
that's between us and legal.
Yeah,
I
we're
mean, that's-
still, KP is
Right.
still telling us we can kind of,
Mike, did you bring that language with that HP
I'm
agreement
looking for it now.
where it says what account it'll go into? Because I'd rather stick to that, to be honest, if the attorneys will let us, because,
Well, they're mentioning 53A, chapter 44, 53A. That is the gift account.
That's a gift
okay,
account.
all right. As long as you're telling me we can use that for whatever we want.
Could we see that, because that's not mentioned in
Oh,
anything
there-
that
there-
Kate.
no, here it is on the HP agreement, the Healthy Farms agreement. Therefore, in consideration of the provisions of this agreement, the company and town enter into this agreement in accordance with General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53A, on the following terms. And then the company makes a donation to the town, blah, blah, blah,
Right.
amounts, et cetera. The treasurer of the town shall hold the funds, and it says separate gift account to be expended by the Board of Selectmen without further appropriation pursuant to General Laws, Chapter
Right.
44, Section 53A.
Right, it
And
doesn't-
if you read 53A,
Right.
that tells you,
Right, then why does this have to say the cost, those operational
because I
costs?
think that they were just including the language of the.
Yeah, I don't
the
like
acts
it.
of
Raise a
chapter,
flag.
Yeah,
Chapter
I don't like it.
55,
Of the act.
Acts
yeah.
of 2017.
All right. I just don't want to be 2 years down the road and we're trying to buy a new fire truck and somebody tells me, no, you can't spend that money because you can't prove that there was more fire calls down to the facility. I'll be very, very upset.
If I could, Mr. Chair, I think the spirit of this hosting agreement, like we're talking impact of the business. It isn't a free gift to go out and buy a fire truck, to use your example. It's the impact that the business has on the community and the cost associated with it. That's how I read it.
See, I don't look at it that way. How much more cost have we incurred with Healthy Farms being open, chief? To date?
None.
Zero. Bingo. There is no cost, at least, and he has the authority to step in at any point in time and assess them. as long as he can prove, right, those impact costs.
Yeah.
That money was, for me, was part of its reputation risk and having that facility in our, you know, in our
Excuse me.
community.
So,
Does the impact cost have anything to do with the businesses that are being impacted by this business
No,
right now?
listen, we don't have to acknowledge the crowd. This has nothing to do with
I understand
what
that.
you guys,
Excuse
your
me.
situation.
I appreciate that.
Right.
But it does have an impact on us, and a dozen of my students have come here tonight, including youth, because they can't believe what's going on here. And Mr., is it Suffice? I'm sorry.
Surface.
Surface. You were very wise last week when you said you would feel much better about voting yes on this if they would help us relocate.
Well, you didn't give me a chance to get there, so it's on my
understand
list.
that, but I need for you to know, as these little kids have to go home and go to school,
Okay.
for you to understand that in fact they're not willing to do that. Okay, my lawyer spoke with them today, and they basically said no until this whole thing is resolved. Okay, now that doesn't do us any good. Okay, I'm hearing $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 over the next few years. And we're talking about taking care of a small business. Again, I get Georgetown doesn't want us anymore. We're out. You can do that. You have the power to do that. Okay? But these
Oh, yeah.
people are suffering.
Yeah, I think you're out of order at this point
Okay?
until you're addressed by the chair.
I'm out of order. Mr.
Hold on,
Chairman, am
hold on,
I out of
hold on.
order? Would you like me to sit down?
As a matter of fact, I would.
Okay, I
All
will
right,
do that.
because you never asked for permission to actually speak over someone who was actually already speaking.
Who you asked me to run a
If-
meeting.
Clearly,
I
I'm
mean-
not as versed in this.
So,
Okay,
That's fine.
This is the first for me.
And I get it,
You
but-
clearly have made up your minds.
And, ma'am, again,
Stop.
someone is talking, okay? And we are talking about a specific aspect of this, okay? We have actually heard your side, okay? And
I've heard the side of my
and we've had,
students.
not right now, okay? We are still speaking about this aspect of the business, so please.
could I have a point for
Yes, sir.
David
Go ahead.
on that particular section?
Right.
And I'd like to say, what is to stop with that in there? We're thinking, we've got to prove it. What is to stop now, perhaps us ending up in front of the hosting company, and they're saying, we're not giving you the money until you've documented the need for those
That was
costs.
my- Again,
I mean, we could end up in court
Right.
to get the money.
yeah, not saying that they would do that, but, right? but-
It's a possibility. I
Right.
mean, it's,
Mr. Chair, I'm in.
Hold on, are you finished, Karen?
yeah, I mean, I just want to make that point that,
Attorney Eichmann has, because I had those very questions for him, and he has indicated that everything is so ambiguous in
Yes.
this new law, rules and regulations that they've come up with, that he doubts very seriously that the state is gonna go that far, but just that language has to be clarified. So, I mean, we have an area, I'm just trying to clarify the whole thing. We have an area that's brand new that nobody, including the people in the state, knows what's going on, okay? And it's gonna take them 5, 6, 8, 10 years maybe before they get it all straight. And we're gonna go through these changes because it's such a new industry
Right.
that's affecting the entire state.
Right.
Question, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
That's related to this. So, I think under the new act, and this goes to your conversation about covering the excess cost
Right.
from Healthy Farms.
Hmm.
I know that there's a limit on hosting agreements.
Right.
Under the new act, it's up to 3% of gross sales. I don't know how that spells out for cultivation, but are they able to cover the cost of the extra 50?
Well, that was what I was saying.
Is that
We could
gonna,
be- we
is
could
that
be
gonna
capped.
spill over and not be allowed? Is my question.
I'm not positive I understand the question. My understanding, number one, they don't aggregate. So if you have multiple operations in a given state, that's.
No, I'm just
So that's-
reading in terms of the community host agreement, so they can't, under the new act, they can't run for more than 5 years, and the community impact fee paid to the municipality by the licensee cannot exceed 3% of the establishment's gross sales. So, again, they're using RMD in a general sense, whether that's 3% of cultivation or not. Do you have the answer?
I think that what you're reading are the new, quote, rules for recreation,
Yeah, that's what I think too.
not medical, for recreation.
They get,
Yeah, they're overlapping now.
Well, they do, that's why it's so ambiguous, and it's
Yeah.
not clear.
Right.
But
Yeah.
when the acts of 2017 came out, it was to cover recreation.
Yeah.
So,
I just-
back to Steve's point, the math of it is, your first payment is what, 200? Right, was 200,000? Plus, you could possibly have to make up 50 from Healthy Farms, so that's 250. Does that exceed 3% of your gross sales in your first year? You'd be capped, on you wouldn't be able to give us that 250. If your gross sales were only, whatever, $3 million, you're talking $90,000. We wouldn't even get the 200, we wouldn't even get the money that Healthy Farms owes us. That's what Steve's talking about, because it could be capped
Yeah.
at that 3%. And I mentioned that before, that was the risk side of it.
And the other
Right.
thing I hate to do is just from a contract standpoint, I hate to agree on a contract based on what ifs. I mean, that's the worst type of contract you can enter into. It's,
if I could ask if Dave could yield to me for a little something, because you would, well, no, but.
He
you-
gave me the chair,
he-
yeah.
No, well, no, he did, he told you to take over.
I did, I told him because he had the agreement in front of him,
and-
and if you have the agreement in front of you as well,
Not really. What I'd like to say, Mr. Chair, is, I'll be quite honest, and at this point, I'm a no vote on moving forward with this. I'd like to work with you, but I'm being honest on where I am. And look at what we're doing here. I'd like to put this off for maybe 30 days, put it back in the hands of the people that had it, that were trying to hammer it out, so that we got, at least when we sit down to do this and vote, we've got one agreement in front of us that we better understand. We can ask the questions about 53A, but also why I came, and I've been back and forth on this, and now I'm leaning towards the no. And I'd like you to take a moment to think about what we were doing here quite earlier. And this area, this intersection could evolve into something there that this could have an effect on. And one of the things that Selectman Sadler was saying back in the beginning, and I didn't disagree with him, he was saying, let's slow down and take a look at this. And I said, well, we got somebody in front of us, but look how much we've dragged on now. So I'd like you to ask to put this, I'd like to ask the vote to put this off for about 30 days. I'd like to put this whole big picture in front of the Economic Development Committee and perhaps the Planning Board Committee, because some of the notes that I wrote today go right with what was in front of us. I put it down as more of an overlay district. They use mixed use. I mean, as I said, I've been on economic development for some time, gave it up this year to allow some new faces on there. But one of the things that Seth Moulton's people said was take a look at different areas. And that is one area, that intersection. And I really think that, we may want to take a look at what's going on there now, even though the owner of the property may not be in agreement with us. And if perhaps we worked with planning to rezone that area, to allow mixed use and perhaps allow restaurants in there or something else of that could perhaps turn into some type of a family entertainment area. And now you're looking at the big picture. So that's what I'd like to put forward, to take at least 30 days and take a look into that of it. We're working on strategic planning. Well, that's just what we'd be doing. We'd be taking a look at the strategic plan of that intersection, which this is part of. So I don't know if that's a motion or anybody wants to make a motion or second it, but I think that trying to do this here tonight is crazy what we're doing. We don't even have a correct, I'd like to put it back in the hands of the people that were working on it. Come back in 30 days. We can talk back and forth about what we like or what we don't like, or clarity, and we could get there. And I don't know if you guys are going to run down the road if 30 days is going to hold you up. But
well, I'll tell you, I won't give it 30 days. When you say let's explore 53A, guys, we've had this in front of us for 2 months. You had plenty of time to look at 53A and the whole.
I am not an attorney, and I have never heard the term 53A till tonight.
It's been everywhere.
And I have mentioned
Steve
just what
Sadler
you're
just brought
talking
this
about.
up on his-
Hey, listen,
on
I've
his
mentioned just what
phone.
you're talking about here, and we're still talking about it.
Yeah, we're not gonna give it
And-
30 days. We're not giving it 30
Well,
days.
Mr. Chairman-
These gentlemen have been very patient.
Oh, I agree
and
with that.
I will not give it 30 days. No.
The spirit
Well-
of our original discussion was to try to come up with an agreement, the questions on the agreement, right? So I think that's what we're trying to hammer out.
Yep.
I am still not comfortable with the language of where the money's gonna go if we do sign off on this agreement. I'm still not happy. I will not vote, I'm with Gary, I'm a no vote right now, until we find out, I wanna hear Jonathan's explanation of this particular statute. I wanna hear it from him, and if there's any risk there, I'm not voting for it. And that's just where I am. Now, I don't wanna see a good business go away. I don't wanna see another
I
good
don't,
business
yeah.
go away. I'm not in the business of doing that, okay? However, there'll be others, and I think you have to be patient with us. I think some of this is mostly because of where the laws are right now. It's so ambiguous that we're trying to put deals together, to Gary's point. So until I get some clarification on where the money would go if we do come to an agreement, I can't, in all consciousness, vote for it. I will not. That's just where I am. And I'm with Gary. We don't meet till the 16th anyway, next month. So that gives us time between now and the 16th. It's almost 30 days anyway.
Economic Development's meeting tomorrow night, I believe. We
Yeah,
could at
so
least discuss it.
I don't think we're putting it off for, a specific period of time.
So
We
what I
don't
will
mean
say to that is, when did we get this host agreement? When did we get the host agreement sent to us?
A couple of weeks ago.
No, Monday. I got the email right here in front of me. I got this last Monday night.
Last Monday, okay.
And we were
So-
told, read it, come back with our questions, and I did.
Right, but I think more so, I was hoping for questions during the week so we were prepared for tonight, okay? I really didn't think that we were gonna be coming here, I mean, there could certainly be questions, for the gentleman before us, but, if there were further questions, I think they should have been, posed during the week to Mike, so he could have, then spoken with our attorney. I still think, it would have been up in the air because we got this information this morning.
Well, I'm good with
But I
that. My
was-
questions have been answered with
I
them,
was
Mr. Chairman.
more
I'm good.
prepared, to get this voted because we had the host agreement last Monday. Okay, I know I read it, I've spoken with Mike, about my concerns on it, they were answered. So I feel that, quite frankly, the board hasn't done its job, in terms of getting to a point where we're voting this. As I said, we've had, a number of, days to read what this, what is it, 44 or something,
Yeah,
whatever.
but Joe, the process was for us to read it and bring our questions tonight. That was what was told to us the last meeting. With all due
I
respect.
actually mentioned, I wanted to be prepared to vote it tonight, not so much questions tonight.
If I
Vote it.
might add, David, the language
So-
that KP inserted about how the town spends the money was back two agreements earlier.
I understand.
Their changes were just, took the word medical out.
Well, I tell you, if it stays like that, I'm not voting for it.
And,
I won't vote for it until,
if I may, Mr. Chair.
So-
We don't even have a clean copy, and it's not even in the agenda. We've got a lot, we've got so many that we don't even know which one we're working with.
So here's my suggestion, we actually don't meet till the 16th. There's still, obviously some wording that this board is not comfortable with, and therefore, can't be voted.
Wording, I think, at this moment in time is for the board and their attorneys.
right,
Right.
It does look like
We're
that.
okay with what you're bringing up one way or the other.
Yep.
I will share this also, having been to other boards. The issue of being able to spend the money has not been an issue. I mean, from the city of Boston on downward, that has not been something that people are overly concerned with. But I'm not going to, forgive me, I'm not doing your job.
That's fine.
I'm just giving you some historical perspective
Well-
as of, 30 days worth of history.
Well, I'm sure you can appreciate the fact that, our board members need to be 100%
I'm not
comfortable
suggesting that I'm telling you
with where
guys.
they're at. So what I'm gonna propose, is this, is that, I'm gonna ask our town administrator to work with our attorneys, your attorney, hash out the wording, to make sure that it's in place, I'd ask this board, once we get it back, okay, to review it, ask any questions
of Mike that you have, okay? And to 100% be ready to vote at our next meeting.
Well, I'm ready tonight, as
Okay.
you know what it is.
There are others that aren't,
Yeah.
okay? So we are going to vote on it at our next meeting. And if you could, Mike, please, make sure that the wording is in place. Go between attorneys, send out to, my fellow board. And
Put a date and a version on these things, please, Mike, so we know exactly, we're all looking at the same exact one.
Thank you.
Please.
What exactly, what wording is in question?
Well, I know Dave has some, questions.
The gift account
The gift
issue.
account.
And the
And,
I can give in to the.
If you could show us,
I don't know about that.
I don't have that. Perhaps you could get me the language on 53A, I think that's what was mentioned here today, so I could see that.
So once the final product is done, read it over. If there are any other questions, pose them to Mike, give enough time to get back to the attorneys, and, let's have a clean copy of the wording in front of us for review, and, we are going to 100% vote it at our next meeting. In that time frame too, what I will promise both of you is that I will talk to Mike about communicating with other firms as well, okay, on that end, okay? And, see if we can make any headway in that time frame. Okay, Steve?
I have a question just related operationally, and I think I emailed you guys. I know that you were out of on an island, so.
Hurricane from
Yeah.
last week.
Yeah, so, just question about the main facility that you had mentioned that you had experience with. I didn't really get an answer back, so I'm not sure what the answer is.
I'm not 100% sure the question, but I'll reiterate what I had said before. I have intimate knowledge of Maine in that two of the material partners, financial owners of the management company in Maine are partners of mine. And we overlap in a tremendous amount of other work in
Okay.
Connecticut, in Illinois, in Denver. And I know Maine as well as Rhode Island intimately.
Okay. For how long have you been working with them?
2013, 2014.
Okay.
Top of my head.
And the reason why I bring it up, and again, just from if we're going to vote the next time, I just want to make sure, that a facility that we may have in town is operating the way that we want.
That's a great question.
Well, hold on.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So, in 2013, I know that this company in Maine that does 60%, I think, of the state.
Probably a little bit more than that right now.
A little more, yeah. So it's the Wellness Connection of Maine. So they actually had to sign a consent agreement with the state, the health department. There was pesticides that were being used, which you couldn't. They had to report to the patients that they were using pesticides. They were selling HERF, I think it is, HERF or Heifer or Herfer, the powder that's on the.
They're using organic
On the thing.
pesticides.
So, I'm just talking about this consent agreement.
Gotcha.
So they were found at fault for this, and from what I understand, they've turned things around. So their facility was filled with mold, and they had all these issues.
Slow down, that's overboard.
Well, that's on the consent agreement. I can read the consent agreement for you, but,
Okay.
so the only reason why I bring it up is I want to make sure, it looks like that they corrected those issues in 2013, and they seem to be doing well in 2017. I just want to make sure that those past mistakes, if they were part of your group or not, will not be made in this town if we vote to have it actually in town. So if we have a growing facility, that's the only reason why I bring it up.
Fine point.
I'm not trying to discredit anybody. It's hard to do the due diligence, I'll be honest with you, on these types of companies, because there are hundreds of companies they seem to be all owned by the same people, but it's so hard to figure out who owns what, where, when, because there's so many of them.
Let me give you a little bit of
But that's
comment
just
on that.
my
In
comment there.
2012, 2013,
Mhm.
the regs on pesticides were probably vague at best. All natural, but what's the difference? I'm not a gardener though, but the difference between all natural and organic, you could drive a truck through. But there were issues back then as far as what was permitted, what wasn't permitted.
Sure.
And that was ancient history. And I will tell you, I share with you, ironically, that was 3 generations ago of how marijuana is even grown. That's a separate issue. The business of growing marijuana has moved so far, so fast because of the money going into it and the research going into just how to grow marijuana. I mean,
Sure.
Scott's Fertilizer has a whole division devoted to marijuana now. Phillips with their lighting on it goes, I could go on forever.
Sure.
That's long ancient history. What's important to Georgetown? We're going to be cultivating marijuana here. Corey Barnett has been named one of the top 100 cultivators in the country twice in the last 2 years. Here's a guy who has an MBA out of Duke, an engineering degree out of Tennessee. He sold a couple of businesses to Bain Capital and made some money by virtue of roll-ups. He's a business person.
Sure.
And he's in the cultivation business. I put Corey up compared to most other cultivators in this industry who are just not Corey, by background, by experience, by a long stretch. What's important here is Corey's in charge of Georgetown. That's a big deal. Corey's as good as it gets. And I'm proud that he's material partner on our management team. So to the extent you never say never, what you read about, that's ancient history in the scheme of 6 months, although 18 months in the medical marijuana or the marijuana industry is ancient history.
Sure.
That was 4 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I was hoping that he'd be able to come in front of the board. I know you guys you had mentioned that you would like to bring him in front of us.
Yeah, happy to.
If he's such an...
He's going to be up here because at some point he's
part
going to
of
be
it.
physically moved up here with his
Yeah.
team.
Yeah.
He's widely regarded as one of the finest
No,
cultivators.
I know, I've read a lot
and operators
about
in
him.
the business.
I've read a lot about him, and I know that his preferred method is aeroponics.
And he
And I
uses
know that-
ladybugs, not pesticides.
I know that you guys had mentioned in your application that his preferred method was hydroponics. I don't know the difference.
No, it's already got to aeroponics. It's just
It's got switched from
Yeah.
hydroponics to aeroponics, okay.
went from dirt to water to now
In
air.
6
with-
months, he decided to change from
It's evolving.
hydroponics?
It's
Really?
evolving amazingly quickly.
Wow.
I digress a little bit, but I'll say very fast. What's fascinating with Corey in his operation in Washington D.C. when Washington first went with medical marijuana, the laws only allowed you to grow 95 plants.
Correct.
Which is a garden. So it forced you to be concentrating the plants, growing really, really dense, well, healthy plants.
Efficient.
'Cause you just had to survive.
Sure.
That caused him to be a pioneer in the cutting edge of growing really, really well developed, healthy plants. Now Washington's now grown to 1,000 plants, which is still not a really huge footstep.
Mhm.
But his origins in the area that he's worked in forced him to be the grower that he is.
Sure.
And he's a very, very, very intelligent guy.
Oh, I'm sure
He's
he is,
not-
yeah.
Well, I say this lovingly because as compared to an awful lot of people that I've met in this industry who are head of cultivation, and it's not my cup of tea for doing work.
He built 2 of the top 10 dispensaries in San Diego, and there are
Sure.
230 in San Diego. He moved to Washington, D.C. He has been ranked by Cannabis Executive Magazine as one of the top 100 operators in the United States.
Yeah, I think he should come in. He's a very important part of this organization, and we haven't heard from him.
Can I, Mr. Chair? Actually, no, I'm putting it, the discussion's over. I know there was someone in the audience that
Well, I
wanted
wanted to
to
address that.
voice
Can you
an
guys
opinion.
wait till after the meeting?
Yeah.
I could perhaps, thank you.
If you could introduce yourself first, please.
My name is Jessica.
Hi, Jessica. Okay.
Hi, I'm a mother, I'm an architect,
Yes.
I'm an urban planner. I just put all that in there so you know. My 2 children are here. Ricky and Lizzie, and we both,
Hi, kids.
all three of us,
Yep.
take archery lessons
Okay.
in the existing facility. Donna, she has developed this program, which I have to say is one of the best programs we sent our kids, tried to find all sorts of other places to go, and this has been the best one. Very, very well regarded, and in 2 short years, he's built a great business there. I'm not gonna argue with you guys, I'm not interested in what you guys are arguing about here, except for a couple things you've been saying. And I find it a little bit ironic. Things like, you're so concerned about what the town compensation is going to be, and who's going to do what for the town, and whether these guys are gonna take care of you, and whether it seemed fair, or whether it seemed the right thing to do. These other guys who seem to be a competition to these guys seem to be trying to capture back, whatever it is that they can from you. But you can imagine, there are these 3 businesses who are in this facility, 2 of which I know for sure for children. One is just partially so, it's just I guess it's just equipment, workout place, but they have young people there. We are now told that we have to go, because when you grow marijuana, you can't be within 500 feet of children. And we were there.
Ma'am, if I can interrupt you, that is not why you're being told to go.
Well, we can't be there.
Excuse me, why are we being
It's-
told, excuse me, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Excuse me, Jessica, for having interrupt. Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Because we've gone over this before, Donna, that it's not this board who's telling you have to leave. It is your lease that is ending, it is your landlord who's electing,
But can we,
so, and it is his prerogative to do that.
Can I finish?
Okay,
Can I
do that.
finish what I
Yes,
was going
but
to
I-
say?
but
You're
you're
interrupting
saying-
me. You talked about interrupting
But you're
before.
s-
I would like to finish what I
ma'am,
have to say.
and I run the meeting.
I know, but.
I run the meeting, so I can actually tell you
I'm very aware
that I'm done.
because I'm an urban
Okay,
design.
but I can tell you I'm done. I run the meeting. Okay? I was just making a point that this board is not telling you you have to leave.
I understand.
Okay, that's all,
However,
my only
okay,
point.
that's fine, but it's not the board, it's the building, but we can't, children can't be. I get it, he's a developer, he owns this land, he wants, my husband's a developer, okay? He was approached by some people like him too,
Okay.
but my husband said no. He said, why are you gonna do that? You're gonna get 3 times as much money. He said, I don't believe in it, sorry. He goes, I can't believe that, why would you do that? Well, sorry. So, that's where I stand. So, but a developer can do what they want, fine. The problem is that we are being moved because this other company's coming in. And this other company can do what it wants and come in with lots of money. From what I understand, the relationship was great with the 3 other people before this great company is coming in to build, the new industry of marijuana. How can you compete with that when you're 3 businesses? So what's fair about it? You're talking about what's fair. Yeah, these other guys can do what they want to you, and you're all like up in arms, like, wow, I feel, it's not fair that they're trying to cut in on the deal. Well, when 3 businesses were perfectly fine being there, they had a relationship, Donna put quite a bit of money into her business, and is all of a sudden, after 2 years, being told to leave. Now, as I've also heard, and do know, that, yes, this industry is slowly evolving, and the rules around this industry are evolving too. And you might be a test case at the moment, and you can feel very strong. It's curious, you are the Board of Selection. You are the town. You are for the town, right? So why aren't you advocating so strongly for the 3 businesses that were here? I find it fascinating. You are so up in arms about how much money you're gonna make, and get out of this deal, but you haven't once said, gosh, you know, these poor guys. Don't you think, shouldn't you be behind the businesses saying, hey, guys, you're gonna make a lot of money. You're willing to pay 3 times as much. Can't you just pay the relocation costs for the 3 businesses that are gonna be there, at least the 2 that are, you know, for children?
I'll respond to that because I was the one that brought that up, okay? And I said, first of all, let's make one thing perfectly clear. All we are trying to do is put an agreement together for the town if they get a permit to do this. This is not the agents, well, hear me out. No, you need to hear me out. If we vote this today, that doesn't mean they can open tomorrow. They still have to go to the planning board and get a permit and a license, and that's a whole different process. All we're trying to do is put an agreement together that says, if you're allowed to do this, these are the parameters that you're gonna work with us on the town. We're not granting them a license to do anything. If we vote yes on this tonight, they can't open up tomorrow. They still have to.
Well, you can, I work for PRA, I know all about semantics and.
No, it's not semantics. There's public hearings. Your case is gonna be heard.
I can tell you how.
Listen, I think you're blowing it, because I asked them, I think
I'm just trying to say that Donna is gonna have to move if this thing comes in, because she's been told already that she's supposed to move. And it's because these guys are coming in because of the.
Well, that's a question for the landlord. If these guys don't come in, then you're still gonna be moving?
And then I have to go. You guys can fight it out.
Thank you very
But I
much.
think my
Please
point.
get the.
Thank you.
I'd like you to.
These children are absolutely amazing. You were wonderful guys.
Wanted to
Great
be
job,
here,
guys.
just to let you know.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, on that.
Yep.
Once again, nobody argues the fact that it is a lease issue. Nobody argues the fact that Barry has every right to tell me you're out of here. And I've said over and over again, if I were in his shoes, I'd probably be very tempted to do it. How can you say no to that? How can you? Okay? But this came about because they offered a boatload of money. That's why this came about. So my question for you, again, very wisely last week, you said, I'd be more comfortable voting for this. And we know it's only a letter of non-opposition. If these guys would take some responsibility. Now, in terms of their ability to take responsibility, let's talk about a statement that was made last week. Mr. Chairman, you said to them, how often will you be having inspections?
Mm-hmm.
And what he did was and the final answer was regularly. He's very good at his job. His job is to get the most that he can for his client and give up the least amount. As far as I'm concerned, that's not an answer. Regularly, that's not an answer. That's what I'm getting. My lawyer tried, very fairly, have a conversation based on what Mr. Sutter said last week, to say, you know what, I don't even want to go to this meeting tonight. I wanted to be able, at best, to come here and say, guys, go for it, okay? I get why your town needs this money. I really do. These guys were fabulous. They're giving me enough money to pay off some of the debt that I incurred for this, and then they're also helping me relocate, and they're taking care of some of that. And it would be pittance compared to what they'd be giving you. So my question for you, as you think about your role as selectman, and it's not, I have no idea what that is. It's my 3rd selectmen's meeting in my life, and they were all with you guys, okay? Would you consider it your role to say, wait a minute, if we are advocating so strongly for this Healthy Farms contract and this and that, can you advocate that they commit? Because as you can see, nobody's giving you a straight answer here with all of these companies. You're all over the place. Can they commit in writing to you that they're gonna make sure that this business does not go bankrupt? And that I have the costs to be able to leave your town and go somewhere else and to keep this amazing business going. And that's what I leave in your hands.
Well, I mean, we all sympathize. We really do. I mean, we sympathize, and guys, chime in as you will. I still struggle to see why it is their responsibility to pay your closing costs. I mean, your moving costs. I can't see it.
Can I explain that to you?
Absolutely. Go ahead. That's what I'm saying. I don't know
Let me see if I can help you with
platform.
that, though,
Yeah.
okay? We are talking about a community concept. We're talking about the energy that lives in a community, inside the people, okay? You guys represent that. Does your community want to have hanging over its head the idea that it said to 3 small businesses that we're thriving despite all the big business around us? Does your community want that on you? That you basically said, not our problem, not our responsibility, we're good. You know, take it up with the landlord. I adore Barry. Barry has been fabulous to me. We have the best relationship. And again, what he is doing, I would be so hard pressed to say no to it. I'm not upset with him for 1 second. So this is what I'm upset with. Because you are making, this is a test case. It's going to be happening all across the country. Okay? What are you willing to accept? Listen to what you guys have been talking about tonight in terms of the rigmarole of this other company that you thought, we're good, we're golden. And now they're giving you this crap. Why would these guys not do that to you? Why would they? This is your responsibility. It's an ethical and a moral responsibility. It is not a legal responsibility of yours. It's not a financial responsibility of yours. You guys decide where that fits into your concept of Georgetown.
Okay, thank you.
I'll chime in. Do you want me to chime in on that?
I am gonna give this.
Well, you asked
One-
if
one-
we wanted to
yeah,
chime in.
yeah.
so-
One more comment, and then we're moving on. It's getting late. Come on.
Yeah, just so everyone's aware, I mean, we keep hearing you as the board, and I think I've been clear with my position that I don't think that this is a great time to do this. I like these guys. They seem, like they're being fair. We've had some trouble in the past with these types of businesses, and just go back to the tapes and you can see them. But my point here is that we haven't given it time. The rules are so in flux. We're negotiating, like I said earlier, based on what ifs, which is the worst type of contract anybody could put together. We have one right now, so let's see how it goes. Let's give it time. This is a huge industry. This is billions and billions of dollars that I don't think we're going to lose out on. I think what the town has to look at, or what the board has to look at here, is that there are only 3 other municipalities that will have 2 either dispensaries or co-located dispensaries. That's Brockton, that's Boston, and that's Cambridge. If we vote on this next week, that's George. I'm talking right now. So if you want to be heard by the board, you have to ask the chair, okay?
I'm missing a word.
Thank you. Brockton, Cambridge, and Boston. If we vote on this next week, it's going to be those big cities along with Georgetown. 8,500 people. We're going to have 2 facilities that we don't know what is going to happen, what the laws are, what the financial impact, how much we're spending in attorney fees. We have no idea, but we're sitting here today saying we would love to do this because it looks like we're going to make a lot of money. And again, I don't have anything against these guys, anything against Barry. I would love to see a sporting facility in your 2 units there, your 2 buildings. I think that would be great for the town. I think it would, it would be great for you. I don't know financially, but that's what I'd like to see in the town. And I think the townspeople during our strategic planning sessions have mentioned things like this. Not, we'd love to have 2 marijuana facilities in town. I never heard that come up in our discussions. But I just want everybody to know that that's my position.
Okay. All right.
Can I just address 2 things real quick? Community issues. One being that I'm still under the impression, and that the landlord doesn't have to share this because there's no regulation that requires him to, that whether this happens or not, you're being asked to leave anyway.
May I address that, sir? May I address
Well,
that?
I mean, I wouldn't address it from you. I would ask the landlord, and he can share that if he wants, or he doesn't. That's the message that we're getting. No matter what happens, If we say no and they go away, you're still being moved.
And I can address that if you'd like me to,
I mean,
unless Barry would like to first.
but see, again, that's between you and Barry.
Except
I mean, the
for
question is to Barry. Barry,
an integral piece.
are you not renewing their lease even if this doesn't happen?
I would have to say that it's not a guarantee she will be renewed.
Okay.
It's not a guarantee she won't be. My preference is, I have a 51,000 square foot building that's empty as of January 1st. And that's when I have to get filled to be able to support that building.
Second comment was, I asked.
May I-
these
may I-
gentlemen- Wait, let me just, I think that issue's dead for me, as far as I'm
So
concerned.
you are clear then that it is not, that
It's
I'm
neither
definitely
or, right,
Okay.
clear,
Just make sure
totally
that's
clear. But at the last meeting, I did ask these gentlemen, which we cannot require them to make sure that you don't go bankrupt. That just can't not happen. However, I did ask them, where this is gonna be a 51,000 square foot facility that's gonna make a large amount of revenue, in the scope of things, could they see in their heart to help you relocate and ease some of your financial burden? Not all of it, and in a way, and I think that some of that responsibility I would ask of Barry also, because in the long term, there'll be a lot of money being made. Again, it's the American, listen, we can't get into, we're not gonna get into the distribution of wealth here, okay? But I asked, could you please see it in your heart to help out a business that's been good to Georgetown and good to the children of this town, to help them through their transition process? Not to make you whole, but to make it so that you're still viable in another community, maybe in Georgetown also. Not that we're not kicking you out of Georgetown. A little while ago you said you want us out of Georgetown. That's not the case at all. And not CrossFit either, because a lot of my friends and constituents use CrossFit. And third issue is, the townspeople voted that area as a marijuana overlay district. The townspeople have spoken, okay? And you asked me about my constituents. I have not got one phone call in opposition, not one. All of it's been very positive. So that's where I stand, and I will put it back on these gentlemen, whether I'm doing this, I should be or not, that if they could at least see, help out with the situation. You know the situation we're in. If you're successful in moving forward with this agreement, to try to help out. That's all. That's all I ask, try.
Thank you, sir, for that, I appreciate it.
That was my position last week.
And it was, and I said today the first thing, that I'm very grateful for that. We are very grateful for that position. It did not go that way, but I'm very grateful for you having.
There's always room for negotiation, there's always room to help.
One would hope so.
You guys work that out on your own. You know where my position is, it's just an ask, it's not a demand.
All right, with that being said, again, I've asked the board, and, get any questions, anything that you want clarified on the host agreement to Mike, and any, questions answered. First thing on the agenda for that meeting will be, voting this host agreement. Okay, gentlemen, thank you so much for your patience again. We appreciate it.
Chairman.
And if there are any other questions, certainly direct them towards Mike, whether it be directly or through your attorney. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Chief. Sir. Thank you for your patience. Why don't you come on up?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
cover a multitude of things. We start talking about the fall town meeting warrant. Includes the chief.
Oh, includes the chief? Okay. Chief, take a seat anyway.
It includes, Tom.
Yep, Tom, come on up.
Assessing as well.
All right, so why don't we do that then, if that's gonna be, kind of a all-inclusive.
Yeah, if you look on your package, there's a revised special town meeting warrant. I think I did mention at our last meeting that we were going to have additional funds from new growth. And at that time I was estimating about $100,000. Tom got the new growth certified, and it's now, the total is gonna be 319,837. We've already budgeted 150 of that. That was included in the May town meeting. But that means we have 169,837 in additional new growth.
Okay.
The chief has an ask for $10,000. That's what he's coming here tonight, and he'll explain that. The assessing department is looking at additional costs for upgrading their software package. It's 21, 22 years old?
25.
25 years old.
Going on 26, yeah.
It might be time for that. I have mentioned in the past, and I've brought it up recently, that we could improve our ability to seek out better options for health insurance if we hired a health insurance consultant. I've attached end of last year, our free cash was so low we couldn't even afford $9,800 to invest in a consultant. I'm here tonight to ask you to reconsider that and utilize with the assessing request, the police request, and the administration request to spend 39,800 of the additional 169 and change, almost 170. That would, there was a typo here, actually it was my math error. There would be, of that 169,837, after those three requests, $30,037, and I would make a recommendation to place that in the reserve fund.
130, you mean?
30 go, and as I pointed out last week, I'm recommending that the 100,000 goes to stab or capital fund, or some combination thereof.
Okay, so you're taking the difference and wanna put it in reserve?
Yes.
After the three requests?
Yes. That would be the new Article 1. It's amending the operating budget from last May. We did that last year in effect to fund the new police officer. We had the same situation. We had, I think at that time, it was only 30,000 left over in new. See, Tom assessing estimates back in April but he doesn't get the new growth certified until September. So that's why there's this fluctuation. And Tom can explain to you why there was such a big fluctuation. We don't normally have a big swing like that, but he's prepared to tell you about it and why he needs the software.
All right, clarification on the numbers. We have 169, chief 10, assessing is 21.
20.
All right, so that's 30, plus the insurance consultant is, say
98.
9,800, right?
Yeah, and then the balance reserve fund is 30, not 40. 37.
Okay. So how much is going into that fund again?
Which fund?
Well, into the reserve fund, going back?
There's $100,000. Oh, $30,037 goes into the reserve fund.
When is this all done though, Mike? You lost me there for a second.
It's done as an Article 1
Okay,
of
during town meeting. Yeah,
town,
okay, I got it.
a special town meeting.
Right, got it.
We're amending
Previous, got it.
the operating budget.
All right. One other thing that I had to add, and I certainly haven't forgotten, but, and maybe this gets funded in a different way, but Chief came up, not too long ago, about the significant problem, about the outdated, towers and.
That's correct, that's what this is.
That's what, the 10?
It's part of it.
Well,
I was gonna say, I thought at the time it was more 40 or 50.
it was 52.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably important too to determine, with regard to that funding, that's the communications for the entire town. It's not just the police department. There's the police department, the fire department, the communication center, which I'm responsible for. So when we redid our radio system almost 7 years ago now, we completed new communications for all town departments, light, water, highway, police, and fire. And Verizon has notified us that they're getting out of the copper line business. It's pretty clear. We've had to change our phone systems to voice over IP. I'm sure in the business world that's happened as well. So these copper lines have reached their useful life. And we currently have, in order to run our communication center, copper lines that go from the public safety building to the tower up on Baldpate Hill and back. They're not maintained very well anymore because they have reached their useful life. They're continually breaking down. So we've been advised by Verizon that they're going away from that copper line and they're going to get into this new technology. They're calling it T1. So we need to get involved in that by 2018. When I came to you in June, I gave you a comprehensive package. It's complicated. I mean, I don't even know a lot about it, but I know enough just to tell you what we need to do. So what we've been able to do is take a patch. It's a back-end patch to utilize this T1 system. And I've purchased that equipment already with my current, although it was not funded, I needed to purchase it moving forward because of the system breaking down so often. And we're gonna put that patch on with the hopes of then coming back for the additional $40,000 in the spring so that we can get better forecasts for next year's budget. But then at least we're able to use that back-end T1 product with Verizon. And the lease that we have with the copper lines, the new technology is actually cheaper.
Okay.
So, in short, my communications personnel, he works for the police department, is going to install this equipment at the tower, install it with the help of Verizon through the T1 trunk to the public safety building, and then the future build-out, the $42,000 sitting for next year, will include the future water tower on Long Hill, because we need to open the town for communications, and it will also fix the problems for all of our departments in total. And it will upgrade, I mean, we made a decent upgrade 7 years ago, but technology has changed. And we don't have to change our radios. We do need new radios eventually, but this will at least get us to the T1 product and getting away from those copper lines.
Well, I, for one, put a lot of emphasis on that project. I mean, when you came
We did attempt to
before us-
pay for this through that grant, the fire chief and I.
Yeah.
And they took one portion of the grant, the cheaper portion, they didn't fund this. We can go back, as Steve's aware, but we just won't be able to, we're not gonna make the timeline.
Yeah. This is, to me, of high importance, because, when you have communications breaking down, God forbid someone's calling in and, the system is down.
We had 7 failures in the last, since January. And, I get messages that Verizon's down.
I mean, one's too much, but,
Yeah.
7, if we have an emergency call coming in and we're down, that opens, I think, this town up for a lot. So I would.
So this will get us through, this will get us to 2018.
Yeah.
With that patch, and then when we come back for budget in the spring for annual town meeting, we'll take a look at where we need to be, because this has been a moving target with Verizon. We don't know the exact date of the cut, but it's looming, and we've been duly notified.
Yep.
And hopefully this will get us through.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay.
And actually, Mr. Chair, I have copies of the executive summary from June, I apologize for the long paper, I hit the wrong button, but I was gonna print it again. Here you go, Mr. Fowler, you can just, and that gives you the technical definitions of what we're trying to accomplish.
Okay. Mike, what were you saying?
I was just inquiring if you'd like to hear from assessing department from Tom.
Yes, of course, you know, we'll get through everything. Tom, let it
God,
rip.
I didn't wait all night for nothing.
Let it rip.
Yeah, these meetings get exhausting.
Obviously, the purposes of me being here is to, on behalf of the Board of Assessors, request these funds to install and upgrade to our current CAMA system, which we've been using, as Mike mentioned, since the early 90s. The system we're using, it does work. Unfortunately, it's built on an Oracle platform, which is due to sunset at some point in the next couple of years, so it's no longer going to be supported. That puts us in a very vulnerable situation. If it breaks, it can't get fixed, and that puts, at this point, $18 million worth of revenue at risk. The system we're using now currently tracks about a little over $1.2 billion worth of property. So it's the inventory and the modeling system that we use to be able to raise the $18 million in tax revenue that we bring in, that we identify this year. And, you know, that increases obviously a little bit every year as we go forward. This is somewhat of an organic situation because the current version we're using is 6.5. There was a version 7 that was long awaited. It's built on this Microsoft SQL platform, which is more current and will be supported for, you know, many, many years to come. Microsoft has made a long-term commitment to it. It includes many features and functionalities that we have been waiting for a number of years. We didn't pull the trigger on version 7 because it was never quite completed from a functionality standpoint to be used in Massachusetts. It is, however, being used in several other states. In one particular case, there's a community in Minnesota that uses it to track and inventory over 400,000 parcels. So it's a robust system. It's gotten a good workout. It's a proven platform, because normally I would be reluctant to recommend getting into anything on an early adoption basis, but I'm very confident that this platform works well. It's being baited by 2 other Massachusetts communities whom I've spoken to, and they've basically blessed its performance. So I think the risk factor of us getting into the version 8, which has all these Massachusetts functionalities built into it, the risk factor is very low. It's a one-time cost. The cost of the installation and the licensing is $15,000. We can have it done within several months, and that, I guess, speaks for the timing of the situation. The reason that this comes up at this point in time is because we are in a very good position to get this installed. The ideal time for me would be in January, after the rolling over of after the actual tax bills come out at the end of the calendar year. We can go dormant for a couple of weeks to allow them to install the system and test it to make sure that it's working properly. If we wait, which obviously is an option, we end up going into a pool of installation with over 400 other communities, at which point we're going to be competing with them for the resources to actually get this done. So we may be looking at a very long schedule to be able to actually get it implemented. We're a small community. The $15,000 owes a lot of money to us. To larger communities, because it's based upon the number of parcels you have in the community, the revenue that other communities would bring to Vision, the company that supplies the software, would be significantly higher, so they'd probably get priority on the installation resources. So we ultimately might have to wait a couple of years to get this done if we can't get it done now. From a funding standpoint, it's an optimum time for us to do this because, as Mike mentioned, we are looking at a significant surplus in what we expected for new growth. So it gives us some additional funds to work with, so we're not having to pull things out of our budget in future years to be able to do this. We can get it done, get it over with, and the licensing, as I mentioned, is a one-shot deal. The maintenance and service agreement that we currently have on a current package, that will pretty much stay the same. You know, it will probably continue to have its 3 or 4% increase every year, but it will essentially stay the same for us. So the long-term impact of this financially is non-existent once we get over the $15,000 or $20,000 investment, because the additional funds would be for whatever infrastructure we need, a new server. The hardware requirements for this system will be more robust than the fairly old system that we're using now, so we'd want to upgrade that to more modern hardware technology. And you know, it's kind of a no-brainer. It took on a life of its own over the last couple of weeks, given the fact that I saw the demonstration about 4 weeks ago. I talked to my fellow assessors who have it in beta, and then the new growth numbers came in that looked like they could easily support the funding of it.
Great.
Okay?
Steve?
Question. Yeah, so if I understand this correctly, is this replacing the Vision Government Solutions that?
Well, it's Vision Government Solutions that
Yep.
is rolling out their version 8 of the software. We're currently using version 6.5.
Oh,
As I mentioned,
the same
there's an
company,
interim
'cause I-
version 7.
I can't go online anymore to see, it's not on there.
Well,
I can't look at yours.
there's a reason for that, is
Okay.
that I have taken them out of the equation because it costs us $2,500 a year to have them host our property records online.
Yep.
I currently post them on our website, so the information is readily available. You just have to go to the assessor's webpage
I got
in
you.
order to access them.
But we're gonna go back to them.
No, we will not.
The new version.
I'll continue to post property record cards locally on our
What's the new
website.
version that we're talking about then? It's with the same company?
It is.
The one that you're going to upgrade, but it won't be online, is what you're saying?
Correct. That's a separate component of what this system does.
Okay.
Which is why we pay them a separate $2,500 to post
I got you.
and publish the property records online.
Tom, it's part of my maps, isn't it?
What I've done is I've incorporated the property record cards as part of My Map, so you can go to the My Map application and you can search on a particular property, and when that property comes up and you show it on the map, the property record card is available to you in the bottom right-hand corner. All you have to do is click on it.
Online.
So it's still
Okay,
online.
Not through this, but not.
Not through the Vision Government Systems
Gotcha. So that's
link that used to
$2,500 a year that you spend?
that we used to spend on that.
Yeah,
Right.
so I mean, I was just gonna say, if you're not spending that, then you should be able, within what, a 4-year period, be able to recoup the cost back,
Mhm.
right? Or actually a 5-year. Yeah, so that's pretty good. I like to hear that. I was confused that I couldn't get on it one day. And
Yeah, we get a lot of calls from real estate agents who have used it for years.
Oh, really?
I you know, truth be told, when I pulled the plug on the Vision Government Systems link, I should have had them post a redirect
Gotcha.
to our website, which is something on my list of things to do, so that anybody who was looking for it, like you, would be redirected to our webpage.
Yeah, okay.
So-
Yeah, that was.
Tom, what is the, how long is the process gonna take to convert, you know, to the system? And secondly, what is the process, you know, in terms of, we've used this system for so long, I'm thinking you have a lot of information, you know, within that software. I wanna make sure we're disposing of, you know, the old stuff the correct way. How do we go about doing that?
Well, essentially, all the information that's in that system is public information. There's nothing in there. The only information that we have that is considered non-public is an application for an exemption, for instance, that includes financial information, and or an income and expense statement that we would get from a business regarding what their rental income is. Or lease. We don't have to share that with the public, but everything else, I mean,
But those
we
are tax returns with their tax ID numbers on them, and
potentially could have that, yeah.
so, you know.
Which is why we don't share it, right.
Right, so, I mean, what is the process of, you know, disposing of that information?
Well, all that information we
the correct
keep
way?
here, that information actually doesn't go into the CAMA system. That's all basically paper that we get hard copy from either an individual or businesses, and
So when we convert to this new system, we're not just taking that information and downloading it into the new.
Not the
you know,
private
system
information. the public information will obviously do a dump from the existing system, and they will import it into the news platform. I mean, we keep an archive, we do a static file every year for whatever the property values are for that particular fiscal year.
Okay. Well, I mean, point is, I just wanna make sure if we are disposing of information, that we're, wiping drives and things like that.
Right.
We don't wanna.
We'll probably keep all of that static historical information.
Okay.
And one of the things that I'm sort of evaluating right now is where to install this. Currently, I have a server in the office that I run this on, and I use it, locally, basically, so it's not connected. The information is not on the network, so to speak.
Okay.
Obviously, as an option, we could have it installed on the network, and I could access it over the network via virtual server that the IT department can put together for us. However, I'm looking at what are the advantages of keeping it local and isolating it from the network, basically just to maintain its integrity. I mean, we've always operated it locally, and it's always worked for us. The only time we had a problem was when the battery backup went down one time on it, and we, lost a day's worth of minor data that was entered, but.
Right. And how long is this gonna take, Corey?
It should be less than a couple of weeks from start to finish. And I'm hoping that it would even be less than that. I'm hoping within a couple of days.
Okay.
It could be installed and ready to go.
All right, any other questions for the board? No?
Could I ask Tom to briefly explain how the new growth got to where it was?
Sure. So historically, when the budgeting season comes along, we're asked for a number that we can plug in for new growth because that grows our levy limit every year. Whatever new untaxed property you identify during the course of the year, a new house, for instance, is a good example. That becomes new growth because it didn't exist last year. It's a new entity. You can add it to your levy limit from last year because, as you know, we're limited to a 2.5% increase by law from one year to the next. In addition to that, we can add whatever new growth is identified. This particular year, we estimated $150,000, again, as Mike mentioned, back in the spring during the budget process, because we don't know how many houses are gonna be built, and we don't know what other new growth is gonna come along. Last year, we came up with a little bit of extra new growth using the same $150,000 baseline because they started to build houses down in the Turning Leaf subdivision. So that gave us the additional money that we recognized last year. This year, that project pretty much, they essentially built the second half of it. So we picked up 10 new houses there. In addition to that, and this is something that you might not have anticipated when you sat down with the Healthy Farms people initially, we picked up a significant amount of new growth as a result of the modifications and improvements that they made to the building down there. I mean, it went from a $2.2 million, $2.4 million building to almost a $6 million building. That difference being all new growth.
Sure.
So that added to that $319,000 number. On top of that, there was a significant amount of equipment that they brought in, which is considered personal property, and that amounted to almost $350,000. So there was about $60,000 in new growth from just that one facility. But that's a one-off. That's, although they're gonna continue to get taxed at that higher rate, it's not gonna be new growth next year, so.
It'll be in the base though, right? Still
Right,
be in the base.
it goes into the levy, and it will be there next year. However, it won't be in addition to next year's levy, it will be part of it.
All right.
So, Mr. Chairman, so are we gonna get a new reconciliation of, on this, Mike? I know you gave us some reconciliation last meeting on like the new free cash and all, those transfers. Can you update that?
That hasn't changed.
That hasn't changed, okay.
No, in addition, we did get the new growth certified, but our town accountant, Mary McNamee, spoke to DOR today, and they asked her when our town meeting, our fall town meeting was gonna be, and she told them the 30th, and she said, well, you'll get the number by the 30th. So, we're not gonna know.
That's the free cash number, right?
The
So-
free cash, yeah.
Okay.
So nothing else,
But we still got a basic idea. I mean, that's just not certified. I mean, does it come in that
yeah,
far
well,
off?
I gave you an estimate of somewhere between $400,000 and $500,000.
Okay.
That,
And we have the
I'm
reconciliation
hoping
of what's committed,
that's
right?
on the conservative side, but that's all Mary will cough up.
And then you give us what's committed already on that, right? I mean,
Yes.
snow and ice is gonna eat up a lot of that, right?
Was that the 150 you said is already committed? What was the 150 you said out of the?
That was
three?
my original new
That was
growth number that we
the
plugged
new
into the
growth.
budget.
Yeah. No, we normally need to save 300,000 out of the free cash to be on the safe side of snow and ice.
Yep.
So if we reserve 300, we may have 100 or 200 left in free cash.
Question, Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
If, I'd like to see the 100,000 go to capital, but this would be my question. Should we put it through somehow in a line item so that next year at budget season, that 100,000 that we now take again will be there? In other words, we've budgeted 100,000 of new growth, so what would be the reason why that 100,000 wouldn't be in there next year? Because
I could speak to that.
Sure.
Again, the increased new growth we saw this year was because they built 10 houses at Turning Leaf. There are essentially no more houses to be built down there. We really only have 3 vacant lots right off the end of Tenney Street.
yeah, but as you said earlier, it rolls over in the next year. So we're
Not as
picking
new-
up
not as new-
391.
not as
Well, no,
new
we're not
growth.
picking up at net new growth, but it's still going to be in the budget next year.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. If we're getting this year and we're putting it in capital, we should ultimately be able to put, because this is what I've always said, if we could commit
Assuming
50%
there's
of
no
new growth every year to capital, we could build that capital fund up to a point of maybe 4 or 5%, and then start putting that new growth someplace else. So, but would we need to somehow line item it so that next year when you're budgeting, you know, oh yeah, we got the 100,000.
You don't
Put that
include
there
it in
again.
the operating, you include it in capital, yeah.
No, you can't put it in a line item.
No.
And not spend it.
Right.
This is the way to do that. You
Yeah, but
put it in
how do we mirror it next year is my question, instead of it just going
with-
into the general
with-
fund?
With discipline.
Yep.
You have
He's
a
right, he's 100% right.
policy.
Procedural.
You're supposed to put 25% of free cash
comes from
into
free cash.
both of these accounts.
I've been advocating to change that policy, to take it away from free cash and put one of it from new growth. And if
You can't do it from new growth. New growth is a part of the levy. It adds to the levy.
Agreed, but that would be, what was it that you just said earlier? You could do it by, I forgot the term you used, by
Discipline.
discipline.
Right, because you're
So
making one big
I'd
assumption.
like to see us trying to take that discipline forward now. Here we've got, we struggle every year to find something for the capital fund. And by the way, I got another thing to perhaps put some money automatically into the stabilization fund. But,
So,
So
you're
we
making
need
one big
better
assumption. though.
discipline.
We are making one big assumption, that level funding and level services will stay the same. That 100 that gets rolled to the next budget gets eaten up basically in a 2.5% increase in overall
You
expenses.
can go back 25 years, and that's exactly what's
It
happened.
gets eaten up.
but not if
And
we
new
always.
growth is, we never know.
Your
from
budget season,
year
you
to
go down
year.
things line item by line item. So what I'm saying was, okay, we got this 100,000, okay, it's going in capital fund under line item such. I know that's not in front of us right now, but, and then when you start your next year's budget, you look at last year's line item and you say, oh yeah, we had $100,000 in that, okay, let's keep it there.
You can't, because
No, it
if you
doesn't work
appropriate
that
it through
way.
the budget and you don't spend it, it goes back to free cash the next year.
The free, that would be all gone.
It's gone.
It would go to free
Goes
cash.
back to free cash again.
whatever we don't spend.
I hear what you're saying, I know
in
exactly
a
what you're saying.
line item.
Can't you do a
Help me
line
out
item?
then, so that- so that we can
no,
discipline.
what we have to say is.
That's why.
can't do a
well,
line item
put it-
transfer
Put
from
it in the
free cash
capital
to-
fund.
yeah.
No, you have,
Then I'd also like
you
to
just
ask,
immediately put it in the capital fund,
Yeah.
day one.
I've
It's
got a
gone.
question
So
on
if you run
something that
into a
KP
problem,
Loss
you can't move
sent
it.
us, since we've got the town warrant in front of us. And I know everybody doesn't have this, but everybody probably received it, you probably look it up on them things you got over there. For the KP Law update, okay? And this is some changes to the stabilization fund law. And it says that the law was amended to require a 2/3 vote only required for expenditures. To put it in now, only a majority vote, okay? But it also goes on to say, importantly, the act also provides that a municipality may, by acceptance of the fourth paragraph of the statute, whatever that is, choose to dedicate to any stabilization fund without future appropriation, a percentage of not less than 25% of any particular fee, charge, or other receipts. So I'm thinking Healthy Farms here, I've been advocating to try to put that in there so it goes in the general fund, but yet the town. But this somehow requires, if I'm going on the right line, a 2/3 vote of the legislative body prior to the first fiscal year.
Assuming the money
So,
goes in the
I
general
don't-
fund and not a special fund to be appropriated by the selectmen.
Well, you can read this, what
Right.
what I'm
Yeah,
thinking,
yeah.
well, no, it would go in through the stabilization fund, and the selectmen make the warrant, which takes it out of the
Well, here's
stabilization
even one even
fund.
better. If that money goes to a fund directed by the selectmen, we can put it in the stabilization fund anytime we want.
Yes, but it would also get us, we can spend it anytime we
can't you?
want, but it would get us
Has
out
to
of
be
the
voted by town
argument,
meeting.
it would get us out of the argument that we have with
I know,
another
yeah.
group in town. In other words,
Right.
we're putting it in the general fund.
Right.
I don't know that it would be considered a fee.
Well,
since it's
well,
a donation.
it says fee, charge, or other receipt. So maybe if you could follow up on that, and, you know, maybe we could get some answers whether we could go that route.
Well, we have an SOP that says we're supposed to be putting 25% of our free cash in the stab fund. We've had that for the last 8 years,
Yeah.
when we can afford it,
Right.
when feasible,
But we haven't been,
We haven't
what was
been
that
doing
word?
fiscally responsible.
No, I think we've been fiscally responsible.
What did he say? Discipline.
Discipline, we
There you
haven't
go.
been, I'm gonna write that down.
No, we've had some big snowstorms too.
Agree. All right, Mike, do we,
Well, I would like you to approve, Article 1 and decide on Article 2 whether the money's going to, capital stabilization fund or tax stabilization fund,
I've
or
s-
both.
Do
I've
we
got,
approve it or we just support it?
I've got today's packet.
Supporting
Cap-
it, right?
Well,
Article 2 is still
no,
marijuana.
you have to determine if it's going on the warrant. You're,
Gotcha.
What do you need, a move for a placeholder?
That should be Article 2.
no, because you're not meeting again
Right.
until after this warrant gets posted.
Okay,
So tonight's the night,
okay, well, what I've got
unless we
here,
get a,
Article 2 is still, medical temporary moratorium on recreational marijuana. That's what I got in my packet today.
I think we have an either/or Article 1.
Yes, but that's to do with capital or tax stabilization fund.
Well, that's what it-
I'd vote for capital, but,
yeah, there's two Article 2s right now. It says,
Is that possible?
one of them has to go
Oh,
away.
either or.
Let me tell you, this
We-
Novus
we-
agenda
in
was
other
supposed to
words,
make us
we need
more
an
efficient,
Article
it's made
3.
us worse.
There's a 2 and a 2A.
You have to read it.
well, do you
No,
want,
Article
I go by the emails that Janet sends out, and the agenda and packet right there.
You wanna go back to paper? Is that what you're asking?
I really, I can't stand this.
here you go.
I like
I'll
Noah's
share
agenda,
with
it's fine, as long as I can get it going, I have no internet connection.
Yeah,
So you just need to make a motion whether to put 100,000 in capital or 100,000 in stabilization, or any, or you could have a new Article 3 and 4, you know.
do you wanna read it the way you'd like it, and I will say so moved?
Well,
I'd like you to say capital fund.
You know, for right now, I'd say do the capital fund, cause we're still gonna have money, left over in free cash. And at that time, I would highly recommend it go into the tax stabilization fund. We have to get money into the stabilization fund too. We've been taking it out.
Well,
We need money in the stabilization fund, absolutely.
we talked about that last meeting. I mean, why wouldn't we just put it into the stabilization fund? You know, can we split it?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You can say, put 50 grand in each fund.
But I think what he's saying is we will have the free cash certified. Now, do you wanna do
Not
that?
in time for, not in time for,
But so we could do that at
no,
this
it would have to be fall,
special town meeting.
spring or annual town meeting.
Special town meeting before the annual town. meeting.
Yeah, yes.
So we
Well-
could, at that time, do the free cash, as he's saying, which would follow our policy.
Well, and don't forget the stabilization fund. You know, we really have to keep an eye on that for our bond rating, right?
No, I agree.
So, I would.
But he says, he said last week it would be too
Honestly,
late.
they
Maybe
would-
for 50 grand if-
When we go out to bond,
Oh, actually, they won't look at this year, they're gonna go to
Yeah.
previous year, so. it
yeah,
doesn't
they're not
matter.
gonna,
Yeah.
it's too late to help us.
Asked that question
Yeah.
last week, yeah.
Hmm.
So why don't you,
Well, on that side, I mean, yeah, but I still would feel more comfortable with this stuff.
So
Yeah,
this 100,000's coming from existing free cash?
No.
no, this
No,
is coming
it's the
from.
new
Growth.
No,
New row, oh, okay.
I get it.
So I mean, why don't you read it with all the numbers stating capital fund, and I'll say so moved.
Well, it's,
So it's right here.
yeah, to see if the
Oh, I
town will
don't have
vote to
that.
raise and appropriate
All
the
right,
sum
you
of
wanna- you wanna do it
$100,000 to
and
be
just
added
say
to the capital
capital.
fund.
So if we put it in the capital fund, what's in there now? There was about, that's CIP, right?
58.
Yeah, 50 or so. So I give them 158. And we still will have the ability to put money in the stabilization fund after we get free cash certified this year.
Yes.
But it won't be at this town meeting, it'll be at the next one.
Well, we don't know how much it is either.
Yes.
There may be an opportunity, though. I wanna make sure that, I would rather go to stab fund first, that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Because we've taken too much out of it. So, and then put money in the capital fund, that's just the way I would go for it, but. So I'll make the motion to.
Mr. Chairman, the motion, could I just ask a question? What would be the drop dead date for free cash certification in order to get it in this special town meeting?
It's not gonna happen.
2 weeks before, well, 2 weeks before the meeting.
So we can amend on the floor,
They
right?
have to meet again.
Well, not if they had an article in place with an undetermined amount of money.
That's right.
That's kind of what I was getting at,
That's-
is
yeah.
in the
Well-
event that you got it certified.
Yeah, well, we'll know the number, and we could, if we could, you're right, you could put in a second article in there and pass over it if we don't have free cash. Cause it's, to,
I'd be willing to call Sue Hooley and see if she could move up our certification, because she's looking at our town meeting date at this point, not the posting date. So if we can give her a couple, 3 weeks to get that certified for us, so that we can post
So
it,
we'd
then.
need an Article 1 and an Article 2, and then a 3 and a 4.
well, you need a 2 and 3, and then just change the marijuana one to Article 4.
Okay.
You could, because tax stabilization doesn't indicate, neither one of them indicates where the money's coming from. That would be, in the motion.
I'd like to see the capital come from the new growth.
All right, well, someone make a motion on either
Okay,
side.
I'm
and let's-
gonna make a
let's,
motion, I don't know if I gotta move to accept, Article 1 to, as written on the top line. That we will take $100,000 to be for the capital fund. Do we need to say where that's coming from, Mike? Do we need to say it's coming from new growth?
No.
So I would like to move that Article 1 be, let's try to get that, Article 1 be.
Article 2.
Adjustment. Article
Well,
one.
then I'd like to move that Article 2 would be the or, and that would, we'll put undesignated funds there, but we will hope that that will be free cash, and that will be the other 100,000 to be added to the tax stabilization fund. So that would be, I've just taken care of Article 1 and Article 2. Because you're saying the Article 2, as I'm seeing it written, is now gonna be 4.
Yeah, this is actually what Article 1 is.
Article 1 is the amendment to the operating
Right,
budget.
Article 1's
Oh,
good as it
okay.
is.
See, I didn't. See, I got it, I've got the old one.
All right, so I'll make a
Seems like that
motion.
happens a lot.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion
Yep.
You try it.
that we, well, first of all, just a quick question for Mike. So Article 1's already done. We don't have to do anything with, or do we wanna?
Well, you have to
All right, here's
say
what I'm
it's
gonna
gonna
do.
be on the.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we place on the warrant Article 1, adjustments to the fiscal year 2017 operating budget as presented, which includes a $10,000 for police protection, $9,800 for a consultant for the insurance, assessors purchase of services for software, $20,000, $40,000,
$30,037.
30,037.
What's the
It
20?
says 40, but it's
Oh, 30, okay, my bad. 30,037, that's Article 1. Article 2 will be to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $100,000 to be added to the capital fund, a special purpose stabilization fund created by the vote of the May 4, 2009 town meeting. And it says, and funds to be further appropriated by town meeting for improvements in or repairs to municipal building infrastructure or any other items thereof. Article 3 will be to see if the town will vote and raise and appropriate the sum of $100,000 to be added to this tax stabilization fund, or take any other action thereto. Article 4 will be the temporary moratorium on recreational marijuana establishments.
Second.
That is the warrant, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I do. I'm still confused. Where is this $100,000 going?
It's actually 200.
Yeah, there's 100 going into capital here, and then 100 going into.
Well, that's because we're not sure about free
The
cash.
free
which should
cash.
be
Right.
certified.
If
So
we
we are-
have the free cash available,
Oh, so you're saying that if we have it available, we're gonna put it at 100 each, and if not, we're just
Then
gonna
we'll
pass
pass
over.
over it, yep.
Got it. All right.
potentially 200, but.
Okay.
You got
Any
it.
other further discussion? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, so, Mr. Chairman, do we have to close the warrant?
No, we.
no, you've already closed it.
It's,
So how do we change it if we
28th.
didn't open it and?
It's still open.
Yeah.
We voted to close it.
Because they're
Oh,
having
yeah,
a
that's right, we
meeting
did an advance
Wednesday,
closing.
planning board's having a meeting Wednesday night.
Okay, someone take that back.
I was glad you were having a
Motion
meeting
to
tonight.
adjourn?
Is that you? Oh, it's,
Are we still involved?
I think we're pretty much. I do want to mention, as Mike said, the insurance consultant. I'm bringing this up early. Mike and I discussed getting the consultant this year. I'm gonna, start discussions, early so we don't get into that same situation where we ran out of time last year. Answer any questions, so keep that in mind, that if you do have some comments at a future meeting, if you wanna put it on the agenda, whatever it may be, we are going to start looking at this at this time.
Question though, Mike, if we're not appropriating this money till town meeting, are you already engaging?
We're just, no.
No, we're not. These are discussions.
Okay, yeah.
All right.
Discussions to, ask questions, to get some information, and that's all. Q&A. That's it.
So we haven't voted whether we're gonna hire a consultant or not?
You funded it.
Not yet.
You will fund it, if the warrant article passes.
And that's enough time to get somebody
I
engaged?
already have it.
Just needs to change the date.
Day one, it's done. Once that passes a town meeting, the next day you're gonna submit it.
Yeah.
So that means this board is in agreement that we're gonna hire a consultant.
I thought we were.
Okay.
before.
No, because I brought it up last year and got shot down.
We're in agreement that we're
Oh,
funding it.
for,
For the
yeah.
insurance.
How much
we were
money
gonna
did you
wait.
remember that being last year?
It was about 30.
Right?
No, but then I thought Mike had one that said was about 10 grand. Swear it was.
One for 25 and one,
Around 10.
this is dated April 1st.
Yeah, so, yeah.
We
and I
just
got
didn't
shut
have
down.
any free cash left.
So we're all in agreement then, right?
No,
Yeah.
I voted to put it on the
No,
warrant.
just the one, I just wanna make sure I
here?
covered that one.
Yeah,
so
we're
you
all
know.
in agreement because
We just voted to fund it, whether we
move
I think
forward.
we can. What is it?
I'll make
But
a
we
decision.
have the money for the consultant?
We will have to
Once that
After, yeah, the town meeting, right.
warrant passes.
It's getting late, boys.
Yeah, so anyway, with that being said, anybody else have anything else to add? Please don't. Other than that, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So,
Second.
second.
Motion is second.
That's a plan.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Guys?
Aye.
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 Aye, yeah.
Aye, great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.